Yeah, well, we're all far right now. Isn't that
Everyone's
Charlie
far
Hebdo
right
thing?
Yeah.
Je suis far right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
It is extraordinary, again, that it is taken Elon Musk to get involved, who is supremely uninformed on a lot of this stuff, by the way. As are a lot of people
we've all
cheering him
said.
on.
Yeah, we've all said that.
People saying, oh, he's exposed this. He hasn't exposed anything.
He's
this
right
is
about Ed Davey, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that one. Anyway, lots to come. Julia Hartley-Brewer here for 3 more hours. I mean, anything could happen. Who knows what Elon Musk is going to say the next 3 hours? Just keep yourself tuned to Talk, the home of common sense. I'll see you tomorrow.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Great to have your company, whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device. It is great to have you on board. Once again, awful lot to talk about, and a lot of it involves Elon Musk. But this has now become less of a spat between the world's richest man and confidant, so far, we'll see how long that lasts, of the President-elect, Donald Trump, and a spat between him and Keir Starmer, and now, and also Nigel Farage. It's really moved on now between a spat between, well, political parties in this country. Maybe we'll actually get some action in this country. Is it all down thanks to Elon Musk, or did he expose anything at all? He didn't. I mean, he literally just highlighted something that has been around for many, many years, and many of us have been calling for action on for many, many years. Will something come of it? Well, there was a little chink of light yesterday with an announcement from Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. We'll come to all of that. But it's certainly ratcheted up this morning, the war of words, with Robert Jenrick getting involved as well, the Shadow Justice Secretary. So we'll come to all of that. But let you know exactly what we are talking about in this hour. Keir Starmer accusing those yesterday of calling for a new inquiry into grooming gangs, of jumping on a far-right bandwagon. A bit funny, I suppose. Is he thinking that Maggie Oliver, the Rochdale grooming and rape gang whistleblower, is she a far far-right bandwagon jumper, or is she someone who's actually done something actually tangible and practical and real to try and help the girls who are victims of grooming gangs? I wonder. The Prime Minister also accused Elon Musk of spreading lies and misinformation online. But again, what lies did he tell? Tory leader Kemi Badenoch hit back, calling Starmer's claims smear tactics. Now, what's interesting about this is that it's all moved on this morning with Robert Jenrick, where he, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has called on, us to tackle the immigration issue where people are coming. He says millions of people en masse immigration coming, some of them from countries where they have backward medieval attitudes towards women. I mean, he's right, is he not? We'll talk to you more about that. Plus, the European leaders are now rounding on Elon Musk. They say he's attempting to influence overseas politics. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, as I just mentioned, has actually announced there will be a new offence introduced later this year with those who cover up or fail to report child sexual abuse facing professional or criminal sanctions under a new offence. Well, that was something that was recommended by the J investigation inquiry into child abuse and reported back in 2022. Failure of the Conservative government to bring that in. They said, well, it was in legislation that was working its way into an Act of Parliament, but never actually got there. But that at least is something that a lot of people and campaigners have been calling for. Also going to talk about the latest woke madness, where a veteran jazz teacher has been completely cancelled, basically forced out of his job by a prestigious music school because he, when asked for his opinion on racial issues in the jazz world, said that there was no systemic racial inequality in the UK jazz scene. Why? Because he doesn't believe there is. Well, he's now basically lost his job for that. What a surprise. Don't tell the actual truth about your opinion, because then you'll be cancelled. We'll talk about all of that coming up. This is Talk, the home of common sense, and the home also of top common sense guests like Claire Pearsall, who joins me now. She's a former Conservative government advisor. Very good morning to you.
Morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Awful lot to talk about. I mean, Elon Musk is taking on everyone, basically, and everyone's taking on Elon Musk. Keir Starmer, rolled up his sleeves, because that's what you do when you're trying to talk business. Trying to talk about the NHS yesterday, ended up with, actually, it turns out, some pre-written statements, because, this is how plodding this man is, our Prime Minister. He can't even guarantee answering a question about Elon Musk without having it all scripted for him on the autocue. This Surrey press conference he gave on the NHS yesterday. By the way, no one's talking about the NHS today, because that's how utterly nothing that announcement was. But he's come out, he's basically attacking reform, he's attacking Tories, he's attacking Elon Musk, he's attacking everybody, accusing Musk of spreading lies and misinformation, anyone calling for a grooming gang inquiry far-right, or jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has hit back. She accused Starmer of smear tactics. Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, doing an interview this morning, has been asked about his views on immigration and asked whether he stands by some of his views that he's expressed before and on his attitude towards people coming here, and asked if he stood by the comments where he said in a tweet earlier just a couple of days ago, importing hundreds of thousands of people from alien cultures who possess medieval attitudes towards women brought us here. As in, you import a load of people from Pakistan where it's an awful lot of the people who come here come from pretty much medieval lives, living in effect. I'm sorry, the reality is pretty much, mud huts, people marrying cousins, women have no rights in any meaningful way, attitudes towards women, gay people, non-Muslims from this particular area in Pakistan. They are not the views of modern Western society. He was asked if he stood by those views, and he said yes, he does. He said some immigrants who come to the UK have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women. Now, we're asking about that today because I want to know what your reaction is to that, because he's basically saying that is what led to the grooming gang scandal. He's right, isn't he? I'd love to know your thoughts, so give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text the word TALK and your message to 87222. You can send us a message on X, assuming Elon Musk allows us to, at Talk TV. Don't forget that calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Is Robert Jenrick right, or is he wrong to say or to think? Is it okay to think it and not say it, or or is it? I mean, you never know what the rules are this week. But Robert Jenrick says some immigrants coming to Britain have backward, frankly, he says, medieval attitudes to women, and that is what brought us here, i.e., led to the grooming gang scandal. Claire, is he right?
I think he's got a point. And you've seen...
No, that's a political answer. Is he right?
I think he has a point. What we
so
don't
if he has a point, then you think he's right?
I do think he's right. There you go.
That's
the only time I will ever agree with him. But what's missing in his grand statement is what he's going to do. It's all very well to put that statement out there. He's been in government.
He's a shadow minister. He's not going to do sodding anything.
But he's also been in the government.
Yeah.
At very high levels. He was in charge of the immigration brief. I don't remember him being this robust when he was in government. And I think I would respect him more if he had been. So what are you going to do about it? And I think this is a good start to a conversation. Yes, he's right. The attitudes towards women from parts of those areas is appalling, has no place in society in the United Kingdom. What are you going to do about it? There's nothing. There's no
Well, we know
suggestion.
a lot of people are suggesting, certainly even across Europe as well, they are talking about, some of the parties, the AfD and others, also being backed by Elon Musk, about mass deportations of people. That's what they're talking about.
And people bandy that around quite a lot, and I think that
we don't even deport criminals.
Exactly. There are a lot of things that we don't do in this country for people who have committed some really heinous crimes that should be out of the country, and they're not. They're either languishing in jail or we can't.
Although a lot of people would say they shouldn't have been in the country in the first place. But there is a reality. Now, this is something I remember being very, very aware of this from days in my local newspaper in the 90s. I was working on the East London Advertiser at Bethnal Green, London, where you had incredible difference in there was white working class communities, there was the new white middle class buying up all the little apartments overlooking the Thames and near Tabriz, all looking very lovely. They didn't mix. And then there was also the Bangladeshi new arrivals. They didn't. 3 different communities. Everyone's going, isn't it wonderfully diverse? No, it wasn't diverse at all. It was 3 different communities, none of whom mixed at all. Local schools went within a matter of years from being sort of 90% white to 90% Bangladeshi. And it was just a really, it was a massive, massive, massive change. And it was very, very, very clear to me very early on, which is why I was someone who would put my neck out on this issue very early on, that these were people, a large number of people were coming. The women largely didn't speak English. No, there was no compulsion on them to speak English. They were not in any way integrating, assimilating, taking on British values, agreeing with British values. It was very obvious to me early on that this was a bad idea. And I've been writing about this stuff since that time and had the usual slurs against me throughout that time. I'm pleased that people are talking about this. I think there is a very strong argument that we don't want to have large numbers of arrivals who aren't very thoroughly vetted for their skill level, English language level, and their opinions and views, coming from countries which are, to all intensive purposes, backward medieval societies. And I'm sorry, if people are upset by that, they need to go to these countries and have a look. Where girls who don't agree to marry who they're told to marry, whether it's a cousin or a man who is 20, 30 years older than her, are killed, quote, honour killing, not an honour killing. When things like many practices around the world, FGM on girls, when you have practices, not just forced marriage, but cousin marriage, which leads to massive levels of disability in children, where if you leave the religion, you face death. I'm sorry, we are looking. This is medieval stuff. This is how Britain was, 1,000 years ago. It's not what we want to live in now. Why would we want to import people from those countries? And what can they possibly offer this country?
Well, I think that's a really good point. That what is it that they're offering? Because the majority of them don't have a skill set that we need in this country. They are low-level workers at the best. Their grasp of English is really poor. They're female, whether it's a sister, mother, auntie, cannot speak English. And you're right, there is no compulsion for them to do so.
Yeah,
so we need to look at that.
It costs us a fortune every time someone goes to the doctor or to the benefits office to provide a translator. I don't know why we do that either. I really, really don't. I find that absolutely extraordinary. So, question: is Robert Jenrick right or not? This is a reality. Shall we finally let this scandal actually? Can we talk about the real issue? What is really going on? Because my view is, we have enough criminals of our own. We've got enough child abusers. No, child abuse didn't start at Hackney because we imported a load of men from Pakistan. It's been happening. It's been happening. The vast majority of crimes against children are committed by white people, because the vast majority of people in this country are white. White people, largely white men. Let's talk about the realities. But we didn't need to import anyone new to do that. That's kind of where I am on this. What do you make Kemi Badenoch hitting back at Starmer and talking about these sort of, these smear tactics? Because this is kind of what meant that no one talked about this, no one prosecuted it. Even the Times newspaper that broke the story originally, it wasn't Elon Sodding Musk who did this. It was Andy Norfolk at the Times, who years back, was it 2011, 2012? They were warned off these stories because of the accusations of racism and Islamophobia.
Yes, yeah, they were, and that's an appalling state. And this is. I'm in two minds about having another inquiry, but I kind of side with Maggie Oliver, as you said, who knows what she's talking about. And the Alexis J report that we had didn't look into specifics on grooming.
Stuff.
Yeah, and I think we need to address that. You need to look at the communities involved in it, not be afraid to call them out. Why are we so afraid to say that these were mainly Pakistani men raping children?
I mean, genuinely, it's amazing to see, even people like Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper actually using these phrases when, 2 or 3 years ago, they were shouting, racist and bigot at anyone who actually said this. It's all being denied. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, made a statement last night, so obviously rushed out in response to this, basically promising this new law to tackle child abuse cover-ups. Basically, you will face, if you are in a professional position or in a job of trust, so like, you're a football coach or a scout leader or whatever, that if you're a teacher, a nurse, a doctor, a social worker, policeman, if you are aware of child abuse and you do not report it, you will face not just professional misconduct charges, you could well face criminal charges and you could face up to 2 years behind bars. Well, this was something that was called for by the Alexis J report 2+ years ago. Now, the Tories are saying, oh, you should have brought this in. Well, yeah, where were you? I mean, no offence, but you had 2 years to do this. They failed to do that. Now, we're told by Robert Jenrick this morning that actually they were in the process of bringing it forward. Very little urgency. I mean, the idea that there wouldn't have been cross-party support and that the Tories didn't have a big enough majority to push that through. But we also, by the way, got an announcement today, this new law on online deepfakes. I do find it extraordinary how absolutely obsessed this Labour government is, and your lot were just as bad with anything going on online. Oh, hurty words on Twitter, or like, I completely understand if someone made a video of you without your knowledge and put it onto a porn site or shared it with your colleagues. Absolutely horrific. By the way, no one wants to see that. I know what you think you might look like having sex. You don't look like that. It looks awful. But also the online deepfake, so that it looks like it's you, but it isn't you. Incredibly distressing, really harmful. It really, really, really damages people's lives and their mental health. But it's not as bad as children being, plied with drugs and beaten and tortured and set on fire and gang raped, by men old enough to be their grandfathers. It's not the same thing. No. How could you possibly prioritise a law on the sodding internet over the reality of protecting an 11-year-old girl from being anally raped? What is going on in the minds of these people?
I mean,
I feel strongly about this.
You're right. Why is it that we're so worried about the internet? Because it's easier to deal with. It's easier to go, we're going to put some nice laws together and we're going to stop this bad photos going around of people. Yeah, all right, traumatic. Not as traumatic as being raped and killed
reality.
And ignored, because those children were ignored for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
But one of the other recommendations was for a child protection authority, which has the power just to go in and inspect anybody, any place that has contact with children. And then you can link that to...
Again, it's another quango, isn't it? It's another body. It's just...
Yes, it is. But if it has the power to
require everyone to do their job properly.
Well, should we just require everybody not to touch children inappropriately? That would be a start.
Yeah, how hard is that to actually... I mean, again, it's a thing that absolutely blows my mind, whether it's social workers, whether it's, nurses, doctors, whether it's what's happened at the BBC with Jimmy Savile. Across the board, all of these stories, the thing that blows my mind, and I think every normal person's mind, is you knew about child abuse and you did nothing about it. Or actually enabled it. I mean, the social workers, the police, basically, and the Labour, it was Labour councillors in all these places.
Yeah, it was.
Enabled this. There is no doubt at all in my mind that there, when people talk about this being like a political, bandwagon and like, there's no doubt at all. But this is a political story because it was happening in Labour councils with often Labour Muslim councillors who are helping to cover it up, a fear of the damage it would do. The main reason there is not going to be a Labour inquiry, they do a review and inquiry on pretty much everything. I think they've announced like 50 or something since they've come to power. Yeah. There's a review on social care. We don't need another review on social care. We know what needs to be done. And you've got the votes. You can push anything through. You've got 412 MPs. Labour, you could do anything you want. Get on and do with it. They push everything to the long grass. But they say they can't have a vote on this or a review on this and an inquiry. We know why. It's because it's going to expose that it was actually a Labour cover-up, which is what it was.
Yeah, absolutely. And they don't want that to come out because they want to be able to brush it off and say it was the Tories, they had 14 years, they did nothing about it.
Yeah. Oh, there's also failure. I mean,
yes, it is. Yeah,
they've got all your houses, as always.
Well, of course, and that's the problem with politics in this country. Yeah. But by calling it a bandwagon, by labelling it far right, all he's trying to do is distance himself from the fact that there are Labour Party members and councillors involved.
Absolutely. Can we just end, just before we go to a break, with some good news, though? As we were predicting on the show yesterday, Justin Trudeau, Canada's first black Prime Minister. I mean, literally, how many times has that man done blackface? I mean, I'm sorry, like... How is it possible to have blacked up that many times in your life? You know, pretty much, it's a fancy dress party, I'm going to black up. I mean, really? It's weird. It's weird. Mr. Woke, Mr. Climate Change, Mr. Woke, Mr. Correcting everyone's pronouns, absolutely awful authoritarian man. He stood down yesterday. Well, he's going to stand down when they've got a new leader of the Liberal Party in Canada and as Prime Minister. He goes the same way as, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, yet another authoritarian leader. His clampdown on people in Canada over lockdown, the outrageous, I would say criminal treatment of the truck drivers who were protesting against basically mandatory vaccines to drive their trucks, was so outrageous, and I'm still astonished by how many world leaders, the supposed Democrats, Liberals on this side of the ocean, didn't say a word about it. I mean, goodbye and good riddance to him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he follows Jacinda Ardern and her failure to look after children by locking them out of their schools for a year during the COVID pandemic. She wanted to eliminate child poverty and made it worse. Yeah. And didn't tackle the housing crisis, was an abject failure in that respect. Same as Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he just yapped on about, Indigenous rights, this and that. Absolutely trashed the Canadian economy.
It did. What about the housing crisis in Canada? Where's that? Still just as bad.
I hope so. That the election is due later this year. The Conservative Pierre Poilievre looks like a very good bet. It looks very sane indeed.
He certainly does. But then I saw Mark Carney's name put into the mix.
Now, Mark Carney, the former Bank of England governor. He's well, that's one of the reasons why we thought he left the Bank of England, because he wanted to go back to Canada, getting pretty hopeful, and then Justin Trudeau clung on. The other thing also about Justin Trudeau is a classic, absolutely classic nepo baby. He was born into political elite. His dad was Prime Minister of Canada as well. He just thought it was his birthright.
Yeah, he thought he'd give it a go. His dad did it, he could do it, and he could pass that on. But you actually have to have an ability, and I think he failed to remember that.
Yeah,
that you had to have some.
Well, and again, he got away with it for years. He's the longest-serving Prime Minister in the G7. Extraordinary. That's how much change there's been. Well, leader anyway. We'll see how things work out for Macron soon, eh? Anyway, lots more coming up. I want to get to your calls. I want to hear from you. This ongoing battle with Elon Musk, Keir Starmer, the attacks of the far-right bandwagons and smear tactics, you name it. The war of words is going on. Robert Jenner, the Shadow Justice Secretary today, ain't going away quietly. He says some migrants coming to this country have backward medieval attitudes to women, and that's what led to the grooming gang scandal. What's your reaction? Is he right? Is he wrong? Is he glad he's saying it? Should he not be saying it? I want to hear your views. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
take us on and accuse us of being lying and fraudulent
What's
about our membership numbers.
Wasn't she asked to apologise?
We got a number of different media channels and journalists in to check the actual database, the back end, proved that we were right, she was completely wrong, and just said, look, we all make mistakes, just apologise, Kemi. She's refused to do that, so Nigel announced over the weekend that we're going to make our own constituency seat a key target at the next general election, just to give Kemi a little bit of something to think about.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 10:26 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall, former Conservative Government Advisor, is also with me. Delighted to say you're also with us as well and giving us lots of calls on 0344 499 1000. Question I've been asking you today, with all these battles between Elon Musk and Keir Starmer, and then you get into Keir Starmer attacking other politicians, so it's Nigel Farage and Kemi Badenoch and others. Kemi Badenoch hitting back at Starmer's smear tactics. I mean, it's all gone off. It's all gone off. It's a Saturday night at the kebab shop at 2 a.m. It's all gone off. But Robert Jenrick this morning, the Shadow Just Secretary and would-be Tory leader, I think he may still have ambitions in that department. He says that some migrants coming to Britain have backward, medieval attitudes to women. And he says that's what's led to the grooming gang scandal. What is your reaction? Is he right? Is he wrong? Should he be saying it? Is it a long time coming, someone saying it from a front bench of a party? Let's go to James, who is in Staffordshire. Good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, sir. What do you want to say?
The West has got one real problem. It naturally assumes that all cultures are equal, and that when people come to this country, regardless of legally or illegally, that they leave whatever opinions they have behind them, and they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, the question...
How come, wait a minute, how come you know that and I know that, but for some reason our politicians don't?
I don't know. The question I'd like to ask you and or the audience is, what would it take for what would your daughter have to do for you to kill her?
Yeah, the so-called honour killings. Yeah, exactly. I mean, most of us say basically we'd stand by our kid even if they murdered someone, don't we? But you've got a non-Muslim boyfriend. Oh well, I'll definitely have to kill you then.
Yep, absolutely. And then, there are passages in the Quran that if they're a non-believer, you can keep slaves, etc. Yeah, I know there are in the Old Testament for the Bible, but we had the New Testament, we had the Reformation. Basically, a lot of these faiths need a reformation badly.
Well, I mean, this is one of the issues. This is why Islam is different from the various different strands of Christianity, which basically are what were the predominant cultures across Europe and the West. It is that there was the Reformation, there has been a sort of a development and change, and there has not been that in Islam. To a certain extent, in the last 50 years, Islam has gone backwards with that Islamist political ideology, the revolution in Iran onwards, and then you get your Al Qaedas and your ISIS's and HTS and everybody else. I mean, and that's the reality, isn't it? And people don't like to face up to that reality.
No, absolutely. And what they do is they shut down what Keir Starmer's done. If you say anything at all to criticise another faith. Yeah. Forget the Charlie Hebdo attacks and that. You're obviously right-wing. Well, put me down as being I make Genghis Khan look like a liberal then.
Yeah. I mean, and don't we all, apparently? Why do you think politicians don't see it, don't get it? Are they just living in a rarefied world and don't understand it? Or do you think they do, but they just, want... Again, I always say this, I don't think people should underestimate the importance of being liked at the right dinner parties in North London, and they just don't want people to think they say the wrong thing.
Candidly speaking, I think it's for the vote. You tend to have, I'm not going to call them Asians, it's wrong. People of the subcontinent, etc., tend to vote Labour.
Yeah.
And while I'm at it, I'm going to have to level one criticism. Why are we spending so many millions on translation?
Oh, completely.
A friend of mine got robbed in Spain, went to the police station and had to pay for his own translator to give him a statement when he was robbed.
Yeah, because why would you expect the Spanish people to pay for him to have a translator? I mean, exactly. Yeah. This is the thing. I mean, my local GP service, if you actually ever make the mistake of going in, I mean, I just find it absolutely extraordinary how long you'll be standing in a queue behind somebody who is unable to speak English, trying to communicate. The poor receptionist just trying to get information across. Like, at least bring a relative who can speak English. Or here's an idea. Why not learn English since you live here? If you're able to use GP services, you must be here legally. If you're planning to stay here, learn the sodding language, as I would expect I should do if I moved to another country.
Absolutely. If you want integration in this country, you need to have a common language. Absolutely. You can't have silo cultures living a parallel life and then just taking the little bits out of it they find beneficial.
Yeah, but even David Cameron was talking about this. Their report, was it Louise Casey? Louise Casey does every report for every government. She's doing one now for the Labour government. But they reported on this, how there's total abject lack of assimilation and integration, and how language was an issue. Everyone's been talking about nothing's been done.
Now, if I can add just one last point.
Yeah, please do.
The thing is that, I've got expat families and this, that and the other. They're in Portugal, they're in Spain. Forget the language thing. They don't want to go to those countries and go, well, I don't really like this country, so I want to politically change it.
Yeah.
That's the bit I really don't understand. Why would you want to move from a place where, like Afghanistan, where the illiteracy is 90%?
Yeah.
To move here and go, no, we really want it being more like Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I do not understand.
Exactly. And why do we want to allow people to come to this country who don't accept and welcome our values? That's the key thing for me. James, I really appreciate your call. Thank you very much indeed. Let's go to Dan. He's on the line in Portsmouth, has given us a call on 0344 499 1000, as you can at any time. Dan, what do you want to say?
Yeah, hi, Julia. I just wanted to introduce another element into what you're talking about this morning. I've listened to everything you said this morning while I was walking my dogs, and agree with virtually everything you said. And the political climate today is completely different to what it was 20 years ago. Yeah. All right, even in the media now, things are changing really quickly, and suddenly, even you, who I know they call you far right, and all the slights they give you over the years. Even you wouldn't have said those things 20 years ago that you said today.
I was saying some of those things. I was working on the Sunday. I was the Sunday Express political editor in 2000, and I was talking about this stuff then. Yeah.
Well, I've been reading and listening and following you for a long time, right? And I think the things you said today are on a different level to what was in any way acceptable 20 years ago. One person, and by the way, it was before the Times blew it, because they were formed in 2009. One person that was saying all of those things that you've been saying is Tommy Robinson, and you, at every opportunity, destroy him, and yet you're saying exactly the same thing.
No, I don't destroy him. I barely bring Tommy Robinson up. I don't mention him from one year to the next. He tweets about me more often than I've ever tweeted about him.
Can I ask you a question? Just one question then, because that's fair enough. That's a fair response. Can I ask you a question? If you worked in an office building with, say, 200 people in it, and there was a person in that building that you didn't like, you found him unpalatable, you'd heard through the grapevine he'd even got into trouble when he was a kid, and you just didn't like him. And then one day, he came running into your office, smashed the fire alarms, covered in smoke, and his clothes were in tatters, and he's screaming, "Get out, there's a fire in the basement." And then he went to every other floor and did that. Would you ignore him? Or would you, because you don't like him? Or would you listen to what he said?
No, I don't not like Tommy Robinson. I'm just saying, Tommy Robinson didn't expose this story. He did say, did do and say some very important things.
2009.
It was already known about then. It was already...
Do the Googling. Look and see when the Times report came out. That was 2012. Tommy Robinson formed the English Defence League and brought these subjects
to light
in 2009.
No, Tommy, sorry. There were already prosecutions of grape gangs before then. That's how we knew about it.
Every time you mention the word Tommy Robinson on the radio, virtually without exception, it's lined up. The following words are in some way or shape or form the far right. You do it. You did it this morning. You do it every day. Anytime you mention his name, it's Tommy Robinson.
I don't think I even mentioned his name this morning. I genuinely don't even think his name came out. But here's the thing. He has done, and I said this on the show yesterday, he has actually done and said some very important stuff. And the trouble with him is his association with, I've had contact with him, off air, talk about digging into it and years back. The trouble with Tommy Robinson is there is so much other stuff around him. It makes it very difficult for people to say, yes, what you said there is valid. He has said a lot of very valid things. He has pushed a lot of things to the fore, but he's also made it harder for more mainstream people to talk about that stuff because it's associated with him. And so he has both done good and done bad. I don't like him being talked about as a political prisoner when the man has broken the law and is rightly behind bars right now.
Read Ben Habib's tweet yesterday about that exact scenario? Did you read it?
No.
Exactly how Ben... Well, I would implore you to read. I mean, I could read it to you now. It's a very short tweet.
Yeah, go on. Please do.
Yeah. Okay, stand by. Let me just...
Yep.
Here we go. Right, so yesterday, this was Ben Habib, okay?
Come on.
Yeah, here we go. The contempt case against Tommy Robinson was brought by the Attorney General of a political appointment. It is extraordinary for the Attorney General to get involved in a civil action. He is only entitled to do so when there is a matter of public interest. His intervention in the Tommy Robinson case was political. It is also extraordinary for someone to be jailed as a result of a civil action. Whether or not one supports TR, the contempt case against him and the incarceration was politically motivated.
No, it wasn't. I'm sorry. No, it wasn't even his first contempt. It was mass repeated contempt of court. Contempt of court is not a civil offence. It's a criminal offence. What he did was committed contempt after being told repeatedly by the court that his claims were complete lies. He told horrible, horrible lies about a child, and there was a case brought to court, a civil case. He lost that case. He has been in contempt of court. He is rightly behind bars. He knew perfectly well what he was doing would end up with him being behind bars. He knew when he left the country, didn't go to court, and knew when he came back to the country, he would end up in court. I don't know what his motives are in this case, but I'm sorry, he has no evidence for the lies he's told about an innocent child, and I've got no time for it. And I'm perfectly happy for him to be behind bars on this occasion. Other occasions, there are some question marks. There are. I think he has been persecuted to a certain extent politically. I think people should have been listening to what he's had to say. I think Tommy Robinson, a.k.a. Stephen Jackson, is a creation. He's literally a creation of the political class, ignoring the many important issues he was talking about. But do I think that he is a political prisoner and that he is the man who we should follow on this issue? No, I'm afraid I don't. Dan, I'm going to have to leave it there. I'm way over time. But Dan, I really appreciate your call and all the points you've made. Thank you so much. If you want to have your say, give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On the app. On your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. Well, it's a very lively show so far. I hope that continues. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say. Let's go straight now to my next guest, James Matthewson. He's a former Labour Party spokesman, to talk about all these battles between Elon Musk, Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch and you name it, everybody. Very good morning to you, James.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. What did you make of Keir Starmer's pre-prepared words, expecting a question, on his autocue, his answer about Elon Musk? He didn't name him. He managed not to say the words Elon or Musk at any point, but he accused Elon Musk of spreading lies and misinformation on the grooming gang scandal. And I certainly agree with Keir Starmer in terms of some of the attacks on, like, Jess Phillips, some of the language, rape, genocide, apologist and things like that. I mean, should be in jail. Absolutely over the top. Also, stop using the word genocide when it's not a genocide. But he also called those people calling for a grooming gang inquiry to be as far people jumping on the far right bandwagon. Kemi Badenoch has hit back saying that was smear tactics by the Prime Minister. Did you agree with the Prime Minister when he said that?
Yeah, of course I did. I really do. I mean, at the moment we've got a very complex situation, which has been made complex by one man, but that's by not Elon Musk, but by Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has obviously had this relationship with Elon Musk that even defies his own ideological base, because he's having these disputes with his kind of MAGA loyalists between Elon Musk's opinion on different things where they differ. And now you've seen Elon Musk attack Nigel Farage, who is a friend of Donald Trump as well. And he's just kind of a loose cannon on a lot of this stuff, because anyone who knows or has followed Elon Musk for some time knows that he's not a guy who is driven by political ideology. He's driven by whatever he's read on his own platform, Twitter, and the conspiracy theories that he believes.
I can see some of the people that he follows, that he replies a lot to, and I can see how his views have gotten that way. But I mean, I'm not quite sure some of the language Elon Musk used, definitely over the top on this. And people are saying that, he hasn't exposed anything. Every single thing that was said was already well known. Just not to those people, and not particularly to the ignorant Americans who are constantly tweeting me as if I'm part of the establishment and the cover-up here. They literally they know as little as Elon Musk.
You get it bad. I've had 825 death threats from Americans.
Wow, that seems too many. I would say 125 too many, but wow. But what? There wasn't any lies. There weren't any lies or misinformation spread by Elon Musk on the substance of this, was there?
Yes, there are, because it's the things that he's connecting things to. And look, all of these gang trafficking and rape situations are horrendous, and rightly so should be looked at to any extent, as many times as they need to be. However, the connections that he's linking between conspiracy theories that are online and doing rounds in circles, conspiracy theories that even conservative and some of the most conservative commentators in this country don't bite at, because they know that they're online conspiracy theories. And the link is quite clear between the likes of the QAnon stuff that we saw in America, between paedophilic cults and the idea that Hillary Clinton had children in some pizza shop basement. It's things like that Elon Musk is using. And there has to be a line, especially when this is a foreign billionaire who's making these claims.
There is that. I mean, we can all have opinions, but it does appear when Elon Musk's talking about, should we try and, have a poll on freeing the British from their tyrannical government, demanding we have a fresh general election. Now, having an opinion on whether or not you think Donald Trump or Kamala Harris is the best or the worst candidate. Now, we're all entitled to give those opinions, as is Elon Musk. But when he's sort of demanding that we have an election, I'm like, hold on a minute, who the hell are you? You don't even understand our political system. However, when Keir Starmer says that those who are calling for a grooming gang inquiry are jumping on a far-right bandwagon, that's a bit rich, given that people like Maggie Oliver, the Rochdale rape gang scandal whistleblower, wants there to be a grooming gang inquiry. There has never been a nationwide grooming gang inquiry. The one followed by Professor Alexis Jay, reported in 2022, in 7 years of taking evidence, only spent 10 days on grooming gangs. Mentioned, I think, Rotherham once, got one mention. I mean, there hasn't been a proper inquiry into this. It can't be a local inquiry because part of the issue is local politicians, police and others covering up the scandal for many years rather than actually prosecuting these men because of their concerns about community tensions, in their words. So how on earth is someone, whether they are Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage or anyone else, calling for an inquiry into the grooming gangs, how is that jumping on a far-right bandwagon?
Because there's two elements at play here. There are people who, rightly so, as you say, are concerned about the issue and who want the issue addressed and who want a national inquiry. That's absolutely fine. The problem is, and this is what happens time and time again, this is why your last caller is so wrong about Tommy Robinson, because the far right in Britain is seeking to use this, as they always do. They use legitimate causes and the suffering of ordinary people to try and further that.
Who are the far right?
The far right in Britain, it's a collective movement. It's all of it. There's different elements to it.
Is Kemi Badenoch on the far right?
No, Kemi Badenoch isn't, but Nigel Farage is.
Nigel Farage is on the far right. What puts him on the far right?
Yeah, what's that?
What puts him on the far right?
It's politics, Julia.
It's politics. Like what? Give me an example.
Right. Because he's far to the right of politics. Like Kemi
No. You know that far right has a very different meaning from far to the right of politics. What policies does Nigel Farage have that you think are far right?
What would you call Jeremy Corbyn far left?
Hard left. Far left, yes. I mean, he's a communist.
He's not a communist.
Isn't he?
No.
You don't think he is?
He was a member of the Labour Party.
He may have been a member of the Labour Party, but he's a full-on. He's a full-on.
No, I worked for him.
He's a full-on commie. Come give me a break. Right. He's hard left. He's far left. You know the associations. No. Matt James, in Western discourse on these issues, saying someone is far left and saying someone's far right, very different connotations. When you say far right, you're equating someone with the Nazis, with the BNP. What policies and views does Nigel Farage hold that you believe are far right?
That's not
true. If you
true.
don't think Kemi Badenoch's far right, but you think Nigel Farage is?
No, it's not true. It's not an equivocation immediately, because I'm not calling him a fascist. What I'm saying is that he's a far-right politician. His politics are far to the right.
Which? I've asked three times now. What politics? What policies?
Everything that the man talks about.
Everything. Net zero. Wanted to get rid of net zero. Is that far right?
Yes, that's predominantly
far right.
followed by far right politicians, by strong conservatives, hard conservatives.
They're far right.
Agree with me on this, because that's where your politics also lie, Julia.
I'm far right.
Well, you're to the hard right. You are known as a hard right commentator. You know this yourself.
Right.
And this is the fascination I have. And your last caller highlighted this well. Your last caller had a problem with Tommy Robinson being called far right. Can you imagine? What is he? Where do you think his politics lie? This is not a problem. We have a left to right political spectrum and an axis that maps out people's political views.
Yeah.
Just where you lie on it. It's not a slur. It's just
you know perfectly well it's used as a slur.
Well, listen, as somebody who's been called far left for many years, I know that it's intended as an insult, but it's not. It's about identity.
Far left is a description. I mean, far right. When Starmer talks about a far right bandwagon, he means it as an insult. He means it as a slur.
I mean, as a bandwagon is, because drumming up, using legitimate causes to drum up support for your own political endeavours. What do you make? As Tommy Robinson has done his whole career, that's what he's on about.
What do you make of Robert Jenrick and his comments this morning, saying that the grooming gang scandal started with the onset of mass migration, and that some migrants who come to the UK have backward, he says, frankly medieval attitudes to women, and basically that's how we got here to the grooming gang scandal. Is that a far right thing to say?
I think Robert Jenrick is allowing himself, as some members of the Conservative Party have for some time, to be wooed by the far right, and some of that language that he's using is intended as red meat for those people.
Which language? Do you think that there are any cultures around the world where people come from en masse to this country which are backward or frankly medieval, or do you think, for instance, the culture in Pakistan is absolutely the same as ours, full Western liberal values? Are they the same thing?
No, it's not about what I think on this. It's about the words that politicians use because they're loaded and because they matter. Because politicians have a platform, they have a right, they represent us, and it means something when a politician says that and takes aim at a specific culture.
If it's true, is he allowed to say it?
Well, I wouldn't say that it is true. Who's he talking about?
He's quite clear. When we talk about British Pakistani men coming from a culture where women aren't valued, where certainly non-Muslim girls are not valued because of the culture in Pakistan, bringing that over here, not assimilating, not integrating, and imposing those views virtually on the white working class girls in their community, and that led to the rapes and the torture.
It's not. I have yet to see an example of this happen in any of my friends who are from Pakistani descent, even first generation, second generation.
I'm going to throw this out there. There are people from every single country who come from different values and different classes and education levels and may have different views. I know this is a mad idea. We don't actually think everyone's the same from every country.
No, but that's why casting aspersions is saying the majority of them.
That's why he said some immigrants who come to the UK have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women. That's true, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, when you come to this country, thankfully, our police and our laws that govern this country protect women and protect people.
Like they did. They did in Rotherham, Rochdale and Telford and Oxford and Luton and everywhere else.
That's why there's calls for an inquiry, Julia, because they didn't.
But hold on a minute. If you call for inquiry, then you're jumping on a far-right bandwagon. Do try to keep up, James.
I'm not saying that I agree with every word Keir Starmer said on this. What I'm trying to say is that the reason he's tackling the far-right element here is because that's the politics that's at play.
Wait a minute. Do you think tackling the far-right element here is the issue, or tackling the people who are beating, torturing and gang-raping little girls? I mean, I don't know. Julia, there's a priority. Which one should we go for, James?
Here is the fascinating thing about this whole thing, okay? And you know this statistically, that these gang rapes make up 3% of sexual assaults to women in Britain, okay? 3%. And yet these men, Tommy Robinson, Elon Musk, these bigots are not bothered 90% of the time. I don't see them standing outside other rape trials. I don't see them talking about, by the way, the 6 convicted paedophiles who were associated with Tommy Robinson, who were part of the EDL, who he stood with on marches. I don't see them being bothered about those people.
The vast majority of child abuse in this country is committed by white men. Why? Because the vast majority of people in this country are white. However, in terms of the grooming gang scandals, this is predominantly an issue with British Pakistani men. That is why that is particular issue. And the reason why people are focused on that is because it was not tackled by the police, by social workers, by anybody, because they were Pakistani descent.
Yeah, in that case, absolutely. But we're talking on an international stage here about Elon Musk making this country sound like gang rapists are running riot without any consequences.
Well, there weren't for years, and they're still doing it now.
Yes, but you know that's misinformation as the current state is.
James.
Because we're talking about this. Nobody is in dispute about how horrific it is. But the problem is why, Julia? Why are they focusing on the ethnicity of these rapists?
Because the reason why people weren't prosecuted and it happened on the grand scale and is still happening is because of the ethnicity and the religion of the perpetrators. You know that, I know that. It's been all the requires reports, and anyone pointing out apparently is just jumping on a far-right bandwagon. James, I am so way over time. We're going to have to go to a break. James Mathewson, former Labour Party spokesman, thank you for joining us. I'll get to Clear Pistol up next. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense. We've only got about 2 minutes before we have to go to another break to the news. But Claire Pearsall's still with me, former Conservative Government Advisor. We haven't had a chance to get in the last half an hour. Interesting conversation with James Mathewson from the Labour Party, isn't it? I mean, you know, we're all far right now. You know,
Wow.
as simple as that. As, you know, Dominic Frisby's got a great song. We're all far right now.
Yes.
So literally calling for a. You know, I mean, that's a Prime Minister calling for a grooming gang inquiry makes you far right now.
Well, does that make me far right as well? I don't like net zero.
Well, you're a Tory, so you must be.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, you call me, you know, fluffy or woolly occasionally, don't you? But it makes you laugh that the left cannot think of anybody that disagrees with them as anything other than far right.
That's what they do. And they do mean it as an insult. But also, like, you talk about someone like, you know, Jeremy Corbyn as being far left. Well,
he is.
I mean, yeah, he is. But the connotation is really calling someone far left or far left, well, they're just a bit, they don't really understand how economies work and they're a bit rubbish.
It's a
but
bit
they're not evil. They're not bad, evil people with when you hear far right, you are talking about racist, Nazi supporting. That's what they mean when they throw out that term. That's what they mean. Polly Toynbee of The Guardian made a mistake of calling me far right once. I've got to be honest with you, it did not end well for her. It really did not. Off air, I was literally just like, frankly, it could have come to blows. I was literally, you call me that again. Seriously, you and I are going to have some serious issues. I refuse to ever go on air with her again. It's such an outrage. And it is used as a slur. It's been used as a way of shutting people down. And what a surprise. And then you end up with thousands of girls being gang raped and no one wants to say anything because you'll be accused of being far right.
And I think I would rather be accused of being far right and actually care about those girls who have been raped and murdered. That's it.
I mean, bearing in mind, James Mathewson thought that, you know, being opposed to sort of mad net zero policies makes you far right. I mean, this is where we are. Yeah. But it's crazy. But his views, now he's a former Labour Party spokesman, those views are very much echoed throughout the Labour Party.
It is. And they cannot understand that people are concerned about things like that. They're concerned about net zero. They're concerned about trans.
Far right. You're all far right. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very good morning to you and welcome to the far-right Julia Hartley-Brewer show. Apparently that's what we are now because we're all far-right now. If you think that there should be an inquiry into the grooming gang scandal, you're far-right. Shame on you all. I mean, God, that's the territory we're in. If you aren't listening to our last guest, what you've just missed out. If you're just tuning in, very much welcome to the show. This is Talk, the home of common sense, and apparently the far right. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's great to have your company. But it probably makes you far right too. These phrases being lumped around to anybody who just says, yeah, maybe it's not a good idea to have a load of people come to the country who don't share our values and have what Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary today, has called basically backward, frankly, he says, medieval attitudes towards women. That's what got us here. Isn't it good to have a front bench politician actually telling us something honestly and true? Yeah, but just call everyone far right. Well, that is what happened yesterday when Keir Starmer, and he was on stage in Surrey when we were on air yesterday, and he accused anyone calling for a new inquiry into grooming gangs of jumping on a far right bandwagon. Kemi Badenoch, the Tory leader, has hit back at that, called Starmer's claims smear tactics. Prime Minister also accused Elon Musk of spreading lies and misinformation. Elon Musk has hit back at him. I mean, frankly, it's difficult to keep up every morning with the tweets from Elon Musk. But we'll be talking more about that, obviously, and taking your calls on that. In particular, what Robert Jenrick had to say in an interview this morning, where he's backed up what he's written in a tweet on the 4th of January about saying that some immigrants coming to Britain, and he says we have millions of people coming in mass immigration, and some immigrants coming to Britain have, he says, backward medieval attitudes to women, which has led to the grooming gang scandal. I mean, I don't know how anyone could disagree with that. That is what has happened. I want to know what your reaction is to what he's had to say. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text the word talk, then your message to 87222. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV. Do feel free to tag in Elon Musk. And of course, calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. You can also leave a message on our YouTube page for free. And of course, messages on X are free as well. Coming up, we're also going to be talking about the Canadian PM, Justin Trudeau, who has announced wonderfully, as we predicted yesterday, that he has going to step down and end his 9-year stretch as leader. Hooray, good luck, Canada. And also, trains were cancelled over the weekend after the ASLEF trade union told its drivers not to walk on snow at the depot. 2 inches of snow. It was deemed unsafe. That's the territory we are in. I'm afraid in the last hour we didn't get to talk about the veteran jazz teacher who's been cancelled by a music school after he said there was no systemic racial inequality in the UK jazz scene. We will be talking to the Free Speech Union who are backing him in his case of a constructive dismissal from the music school. We'll be talking to them in the next hour of the show. Unfortunately, we ran a little bit late with, discussions of who is and who isn't far right, basically. We're all far right unless we agree with Labour on everything. I think it's a fair summary. Anyway, we'll get to all of that. Joining me this morning, former Conservative Government Advisor, far right, obviously, Claire Pearsall. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I mean, we are just in some very weird territory. I have to say, I didn't understand when I was away on holiday last week, and I tried to stay off Twitter, apart from, obviously I post a beach photo just because it annoys people, and that's just kind of what I do. It's so much fun having people send abuse to you when you're sitting drinking a pina colada on a beach in Mexico, just going, have a great time. I don't care. I literally just don't care. It just makes me laugh. But I couldn't work out, where is this grooming scandal story come from? What new aspect of the story is? There wasn't really anything new other than this letter that Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister, had written saying, no, we don't want a full national inquiry. But then it completely exploded. It's now, a week that this has been going on since Elon Musk's first tweets. The war of words has not died down. I think Keir Starmer thought that he was going to dampen this down yesterday with his pre-scripted words. He really has failed to do so. He said that grooming gang inquiry callers, basically politicians, he said, of course, not the people who are victims and the whistleblowers who also want this, a grooming gang inquiry. He says they are jumping on the far-right bandwagon. He's accused Elon Musk of spreading lies and misinformation. Kemi Badenoch has said Starmer's just, pushing smear tactics. I mean, it has all just completely and utterly gone off. Keir Starmer's words were met by Elon Musk replying that the Prime Minister refusing the demands for a national inquiry show he was deeply complicit in the mass rapes in exchange for votes. So this has completely gone off. James Cleverly, the former Home Secretary, said that making his comments, Keir Starmer was the best recruiting sergeant for extremism. I mean, is this going to go away anytime soon, Claire?
No, it really won't. And Kemi Badenoch is launching a vote in the Commons tomorrow as part of a different bill, the Children and Welfare Bill, to look at grooming gangs. So you can see that the politicking isn't going to stop, because if the Labour Party votes against it... She wants
to have a vote on whether we're going to have that inquiry.
Indeed, indeed. So you can see that if the Labour Party vote against it or abstain, then that's your election literature for the next 6 months.
Is that playing politics with children's lives?
It feels a little optimistic, because the bill that she's trying to pin it to doesn't actually really lend itself to this kind of vote, and it's on the second reading, so I'm not entirely sure if she can do it. There are better people at parliamentary procedure than I, so it feels a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction.
I think it's a fair argument from anybody criticising the Tories to say, and people put this point to Robert Jenrick on the media round this morning, you guys were in power. Robert Jenrick was an immigration minister. He sat in cabinet. Like, he wasn't in the cabinet, but he sat in cabinet. Kemi Badenoch was in cabinet. Well, when were they calling for this inquiry then? They also turned down having another full inquiry. The argument had been, well, there had been this full inquiry, the Alexis J one, but it's very, very clear that was a 7-year inquiry into, what happened in the church abuse or in care homes, you name it, everywhere. They barely touched on the grooming gangs issue, the argument being that, well, it's already been exposed, we already know about that. Rotherham got one mention. There was 10 days of hearings. People like Maggie Oliver weren't even interviewed. They interviewed chief constables. Why are you interviewing the chief constable of Manchester Police but not the whistleblower who left her job to expose the issue? That seems to me to be an inquiry that didn't do its full job. Alexis J is getting an awful lot of credit, but I'm not sure she did go far enough. Now, the remit was very, very wide. Having a particular inquiry on this issue, it being national, not local, national is crucial here, is it not? Simply because there was local cover-ups by the police, by the social workers, by the local councillors, many of whom wanted to protect, in some cases, their own mates and family members who were being accused of these crimes. I mean, that was what was going on. That said, I don't know who I would trust to run this inquiry. Who would be someone who was enough of the great and good to run such an inquiry, as in having a legal background, being a judge or whatever, but who could be trusted to basically put the boot into the establishment. Other than, of course, when you think about the Grenfell inquiry, so much criticism of that former justice, and even from the families, those who lost loved ones in Grenfell. And actually, he totally went for it. In no way did he pull his punches.
And I think we saw that with things like the Windrush scandal. The report that was done into that was absolutely damning of what the government had failed on. And so I don't think people are scared to do that. I think what's really worrying is that the Labour government was suggesting that the local councils should run their own independent inquiries. Well, please, they're the ones who are culpable in
that's like saying, that's like saying to the BBC, I think you should run the investigation into how you covered up Jimmy Savile. That's going to work out well.
Marking your own homework, that's always a good thing, isn't it? So
but the Tories did fail. Alexis J reported in 2022, made a load of recommendations. Yvette Cooper last night did, again, wasn't in their manifesto, hadn't been mentioned, clearly rushed through as a result of this. So that there was a piece written by Keir Starmer for The Sun today. Clearly he wanted to have something tangible. This is how politics is done in this country. It is done on the 24/7 news cycle. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, promising in Parliament last night, and again, an emergency statement, that a new law to tackle the child abuse cover-ups. So basically, if you are a professional, if you're in a position of trust, you're a teacher, a social worker, a police officer, a scout leader, a football coach, if you are aware of allegations of child abuse or suspect it and you don't report it, you will face not only professional misconduct charges but also possible criminal charges. You could actually face going to jail for up to 2 years. I think that's long awaited. But that was called for by Alexis J in 2022. Well, your lot were in power. Robert Jenrick has said, it was going into. I mean, it was going through the motions. I mean, they tried to put the smoking ban through,
Do you not remember 7
I'm less
bins?
worried about adults choosing to smoke than I am about 11-year-olds being gang raped. Got me old-fashioned.
It wasn't a priority, because if it was, they would have pushed it through.
They had a big majority. They could have pushed through anything they wanted.
They absolutely could have done it, and they picked on subjects that were completely bonkers in my mind when you're looking at the Green Agenda, when you're looking at trans rights, and they pushed those laws through real quick.
Yeah.
But something like this, they went, we have to think about it. Well, why?
Again, I mean, and also cross-party consensus. Who doesn't think that people in a professional role who know about child abuse and don't report it shouldn't face consequences? Who doesn't think that? Because you're weird if you don't think that. I don't know. Maybe that makes me far right, because apparently everything, as we discovered in the last half hour, makes me far right.
I just don't think it would have been difficult to get a consensus at all, and the legal minds in that place could have drawn up something that was a bit more watertight than what we have.
And as we discovered today, the safeguarding minister who's out from the government, again, no cabinet minister out and about today or yesterday, but the safeguarding minister talking about this new law on online deepfakes, as we were discussing in the last hour. They're worried about. I mean, yes, these are massively damaging. I mean, someone either makes a video without your knowledge or photographs of you and put them online, or when somebody creates a deep fake, AI image that purports to be you. Incredibly upsetting and damaging, and of course a criminal act. But again, but this government was planning to bring in a law on that quicker than bringing in a law on protecting children from actual rape in real life. The obsession that politicians, but particularly Labour, have whenever there's anything, an MP gets stabbed to death in his constituency surgery, like David Emmers. Oh, hurty tweets. We need to tackle online abuse. I'm thinking we need to worry more about the people with knives who believe there are 72 virgins waiting for them, who go and stab a publicly elected MP. I'm thinking the reality of crime and risk and threats on the streets is what people are concerned about. Whether that is, having, your mobile phone stolen, your house broken into, or your 11-year-old gang raped on a nightly basis.
But it's easier to make everybody's attention go into a different direction.
Hurty tweets.
Hurty tweets, look at those, that's really, really bad. That's causing all of these problems, without looking at the fact that what's causing all these problems are people behaving appallingly, knives on the street, and people not being locked up.
Yep. And what do you make of Robert Jenrick saying some immigrants coming to Britain have backward, frankly medieval attitudes to women? And he said basically that's what brought us to the grooming gang scandal. We are talking about men of British Pakistani descent carrying out these crimes. In the court cases, in the actual trials, we've actually had these men say, they're white girls, they're trash, they would use white terms, white slag, white slut, things like that, to the girls as they were abusing and raping them. Lots of conversations about how, well, they were easy pickings. No one cared about them. They didn't cover up. They were not modestly dressed, and therefore, I've done a lot of travelling around the world. It's very, very, very clear to me how you are treated if you're a woman on your own, and how you're treated if you are not covered up. And basically, there are an awful lot of cultures where if you're with a man and you're covered up, up to the neck, whatever, you're treated respectfully. If not, you're basically a prostitute. That's what you're treated as. And anyone who hasn't travelled widely doesn't realise that is what is the case for many women in many cultures. You need to keep your eyes wide open. When Robert Jenrick says this, is he wrong to say it? Is he wrong to think it? Is it, tell me what you make of what he's had to say.
He is not wrong to say it.
Because it's true.
He really does have a point. There is truth in what he's saying, yes. I don't like
He's not saying all immigrants. He says some immigrants coming to Britain.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because it isn't everybody. We can't tar everybody with the same brush.
Not.
However, the majority of people coming from places like Pakistan and Bangladesh have a view of women.
And many sub-Saharan countries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to say
Middle East.
And it's not a small list, but they're...
North African countries as well. I mean, there are many countries where...
Their attitudes towards women are absolutely appalling. They are treated as not even second-class citizens. They are treated as worse than anything else. They are treated like dogs on the street. It is appalling. Why are we allowing immigration to people like that who have no benefit to this country,
Claire,
without calling
you know why? It's because diversity is our strength. The King said it. Apparently Britain was built on diversity. I mean, it literally wasn't. Literally the opposite was. It was built on having a monoculture, a Judeo-Christian culture. I'm an atheist. The values of this country, the laws of this country, the culture of this country are all based on the Judeo-Christian culture and the Bible teachings. That's where they come from. The Industrial Revolution came out of Protestantism. It's really, I mean, if you see what happened in Northern Europe and Southern Europe and what's happened to North America, South America, the impact of our religious, cultural traditions are huge in terms of our relationship with the state, people's relationship with any god they believe in, relationships with each other, property rights. It is absolutely specific to our cultural background. And the idea, again, I've been saying for years, I'm not a multiculturalist. I couldn't care less what colour someone's skin is. I'm no issue whether, 10% or 90% of this country were white or black. It's totally irrelevant to me. The only thing I'm interested in is people's values, culture, opinions, views. I don't think everyone should have the same views. Other than that, we need to agree we believe in democracy, the rule of law, in equal rights for people regardless of their sex, their sexuality, their race, their religion. I mean, the basics. If you don't agree on the basics, it's like two teams playing football and one's playing rugby rules and one playing football. It doesn't work. You have to all agree we're all playing the football rules.
Yes.
But that's the thing. You can't have a whole load of people coming in saying, well, we're playing rugby.
And we have got to the point in this country where you cannot point that out. You cannot say we require you to speak English, understand English, learn English. We can't say that.
To allow your daughter to marry who she wants.
Exactly. But there again, we're going to be called far right for questioning what our border controls should be.
But again, a member of my family, my extended family, has married a Muslim woman, 3 beautiful, beautiful children, who her parents have never met. Because they refused to attend the wedding, refused to have anything to do, because he is white and atheist, and non-Muslim being the crucial thing, and would not convert. That's it. She was dead to them. She was literally just dead to them. Now, our family, completely she seems like a really nice girl. The kids are absolutely divine. Not an issue. Just simply not an issue. If it was the other way round, we would be racist. We would be rightly accused of being racist, intolerant, anti-Muslim, blah, 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 blah. But if they do it, well, that's a cultural difference. Yeah, well, it's an unacceptable cultural difference is what it is.
In this country, it absolutely is. And what would it take to make you say to your daughter, I'm never going to speak to you again?
I'm never going to meet your children.
I just can't fathom it. I really can't.
It is extraordinary, isn't it? Just sorry, can I also talk about Charlie Hebdo? It's 10 years today, in 2015, on the 7th of January, where 12 people who were journalists, cartoonists, were murdered for basically a cartoon, not even a critical cartoon, of Prophet Muhammad in the French satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo. Absolutely horrific attack. Everyone was saying "Je suis Charlie." Everyone was standing firm. Prime Minister only a couple of months ago basically agreed with a backbench Labour MP who called for a blasphemy law in this country. I mean, these people were killed because they had blasphemed against the Islamic religion. Prime Minister apparently saying, yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I can't believe it's 10 years ago. I really can't. I remember that day very well. But also we've got a teacher in Batley who is still in hiding.
Yeah.
From people who believe
luckier than Samuel Paty in France, where the ongoing trial, because he was beheaded.
He was beheaded. I mean, how in any way is this deemed to be acceptable? And the Prime Minister hiding behind the point that it is either far right or it's the Conservatives' fault doesn't wash.
Yeah, exactly. And again, here's the issue. Again, 10 years on, and the problem is worse, not better.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Our Lady in
worse.
Heaven film, basically, the cinema's refusing to show it and everyone apologising. And there's a little boy who brought in a Quran for a bet at school and it got a bit scuffed. And the local police chief constable taking the mother with her little shroud on, covering her head, to go and basically beg the local men in the local mosque in front of the imam, basically to not kill her family.
She was there for an hour.
Non-crime hate incident brought against the boy. No charges whatsoever against the people threatening death against the family. Not a single charge brought, not a single arrest.
No.
The problem has got worse. Je suis Charlie, what a load of abject BS that is. Because actually, on the contrary, we effectively have a blasphemy law in this country now. and a Prime Minister who wants to make it de jure, not de facto.
Well, we're all going to be put in prison, aren't we? I shall see you there next week.
No, but I'm not worried about it. I'm happy to stand firm on things other than I would really, really like it not to open the door of my house one day and have someone stab me to death, which is what happens to people who blaspheme, inverted commas, against the Islamic religion. This has happened to numerous people across Europe. I know people who are very brave souls who speak out in this country who have to have panic buttons, who can't tell people where they're going to be in advance and have to have 24-hour security because of this. This is a very real threat. It's happening right now. As you say, the Batley Grammar School teacher, 4 years on, still in hiding. I don't think he'll ever be able to come out of hiding because of this threat. It's a very, very, very real thing. And it's not about people being respectful of any particular religion. I don't think we should necessarily respect any religion. I think they should all be mocked. I'm an atheist. I'm entitled to do that. And you can mock me and tell me I'm going to hell. I don't care. But we don't mock certain religions because we are fearful, because we worry about our families and ourselves being murdered. That is an untenable situation. But don't forget, we're far right for saying that. Yeah. There we are. 11:23 is time. I want to get to your calls, 0344 499 1000. What do you make of what Robert Jenrick had to say, saying some immigrants coming to Britain have backward, frankly medieval attitudes to women, and he says that's what led to the grooming gang scandal. Was he right? What's your reaction? 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
He's sitting there, and what's being done about it? Nothing. I mean,
well, that's not.
And the spurious reason that he was put in for. Yeah, but the reason, Errol. His reason that he was put in because he didn't attend a court appearance. I mean, that's laughable, you know. I mean, that's totally laughable.
Well, I mean, the fact is that he had an opportunity to not be in contempt of court. He chose to be in contempt of court, and that's why he's in prison. So he's in there really because of his own actions, Errol.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. Welcome back. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's get straight to your phone calls coming in about this whole Elon Musk, Keir Starmer, Kemi Badenoch, everybody row. Nigel, God, we haven't mentioned Nigel Farage in this hour. But Robert Jenrick, the Shadow Justice Secretary, has put his tuppence worth in today, saying that some immigrants coming to Britain have backward, frankly medieval attitudes to women, which has led to the grooming gang scandal. What's your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Brian is on the line. He's in Wigan. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Julia. Good morning to you.
Good morning. No, you're very, very faint. I can barely hear you, my love. Are you on a hands-free?
Yes, I am.
Brian, we can barely hear you. Are you on hands-free? Can you go on to the phone?
Is that better now,
That's much better. Lovely. What do you want to say, my love?
Yeah, that Labour guy, God blame me.
James Mathewson.
Yeah. I was driving along and I was getting so angry and frustrated with the guy. First of all, to say Jeremy Corbyn's not left-wing, because he works with him. He's not a communist. He says, he's a Labour man. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Even Starmer went to a Marxist course over in Russia.
And Starmer says he's a socialist. He's used that word.
Exactly. And Starmer's got to be very careful by calling what I would say everyday people who are concerned over the country. I agree with you.
Calling them far right, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Far right is the evil Nazi people that have swastikas all over the place.
Exactly.
Normal people of this country want the country run properly, where there's an even playing field, where everyone gets treated the same as far with law and rules and whatever.
That's not unreasonable, is it? We've seen two-tier policing, two-tier justice, not just over like the Southport attacks, but we've seen it over the years. We know that these grooming gangs were not prosecuted because of the ethnicity of the perpetrators.
Exactly. And the thing is, he also made the comments, well, my Pakistani friends...
what was that about?
I mean, he's probably in an area where this doesn't go on. And I'm sure if it did, then his Pakistani friends would know about it. But they're not going to tell him. But it's never in their area who shout the loudest. Everyone's, standing up for them and all this lot. Now, I think they've got to be careful calling normal people, what I say normal people, which I hope I'm one of them, as far right. I'm not. Yeah. I'm just sick of... I'm old enough. I'm now 72, Julia. Still do a bit of work. And, I've seen the various governments and, each and every one is guilty of not doing their jobs properly.
Absolutely.
And as far as having a commission on maybe a task force should be better, where they have the power, an independent task force, where they can look at all areas and get it actually done.
And do it, let's just say it's got to be a year, and basically say, look, can everybody who's been involved, if you've been a victim or you've been a whistleblower, you know the names of, the police officers, the social workers, the teachers or whatever, the care workers who did not do anything or who covered it up, the local councillors, come forward, give us a signed affidavit, we can cross-examine, and then we're just going to collate all the information and then we're going to take action. I mean, there's no reason why these things have to cost 200 million quid and take 10 years, is there?
Exactly. And Julia, many years ago, I used to be a rep and also a delivery driver. Yeah. And I've been to, and I know the areas well of Rochdale, Oldham. I mean, that's when you see what's going on in Oldham and you see Angela Rayner not raise one voice, that says it all.
No, exactly. And I just love seeing those pictures of her with her long dress and her buttoned-up collar, so different from her normal attire when she attends meetings in her local constituency. It is extraordinary. Brian, thank you very much indeed. Well, as I say, we're all far right now, apparently. Let's go to our next caller. Now, this is Sam, who is in Manchester. But, Sam, you've chosen not to give your real name. Tell us why.
Because the information that I'm about to give you it could put people's lives in jeopardy. Plus, I'm not from Manchester, but I won't tell you the exact town because there's actually a police investigation going into. We'll talk about maybe 50 plus people in this town. Yeah. It's a West Yorkshire town. I won't give you the names of the...
And is this part of the grooming scandal?
Yes.
Tell us your involvement.
My involvement is a very good friend who's listening now, by the way, because I just got off the phone to her and asked what I could say and what I couldn't say.
Yeah.
So she's listening now, and her sister were groomed from the ages of 11 to 21.
Yeah.
They are now in the 30s, still no justice, and have been told by the police that the investigation is going to be going on from either 2 to 8 years before they see justice.
Why?
And because of the riots, it's kind of sort of like just sort of taking a... Sort of like it's gone silent. But
it's gone into basically pushed it.
There's hundreds of girls involved. Hundreds.
And your friend and her sister, they were groomed, and we're talking about this modus operandi we've seen, Pakistani grooming gangs.
So the only reason why it's been found and they've finally been listened to is because they looked back at the records, the police records of when this certain individual had been stopped, and he got stopped in a car with another accomplice and the girl and her sister in the back when they were 11 years old.
Right. And they've kind of put 2 and 2 together. And did she and her sister, did they tell anyone? Did they tell their parents, teachers, or anyone else?
You would have to ask. You'd have to ask her about that. I'm not on here to lie or anything like that. I just know there's certain bits of information that we've been discussing together. But I shared my 40th birthday with this lady.
You know her well. Yeah.
Yeah, I know very well.
And she was a victim of rape. I mean, the most extreme grooming. Yeah. We're not talking. Yeah. I mean, it's called what they are. They're rape gangs.
We're talking multiple. Yeah.
And how is she today? How is she?
The thing is, they're looking at compensation for it, but because she's got on well in life, and this is just what she said directly 5 minutes ago before I got on the phone to you. Because she's got on well in life and sort of kept it and been strong about it, she's not going to get as much compensation because that's how it works.
Because she got herself together and had the strength of mind to do that. I mean, which the same awful things happened to her.
I can't speak for a sister, but we was talking about it at my birthday and we were in tears, you know what I mean? What should have been a good celebration for their sister and myself. Which,
how does she and her sister, how does she particularly feel about Elon Musk bringing this up and it's coming to the back in the public eye? What Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, announced last night about people facing jail?
I could go right to the beginning for you if you want, but like in the birth of like sort of the BNP and things like that, they wasn't getting listened to at the start, and they felt like they were alone. So they was then preyed on by things like the BNP before they started, before all the football hooligans got involved and stuff like that. It was more about the grooming things, you know. So they thought, this is a good cause, we'll get involved in this, but then obviously it turned. So they were then obviously pulled into that side of things because it wasn't, and this is how it works, isn't it? Hate breeds hate, and if you leave people and without a voice, then other parties can get involved and then take advantage of that vulnerability.
Yeah.
So we have to be really careful with that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
As far as the Tommy Robinson thing's concerned, he's like a villain that's been put in the way of justice, and. I don't think, if you ask all these victims, I don't think they care. She's texting me now as I speak to you. So, hang on. She told social services, cool, still listening, everyone was aware, social services, teachers and parents.
And nothing was done?
Nothing.
But she told her parents, so her dad knew, and what did he do?
Well, it's, when you've got groups of Asian grooming gangs in these towns, what are predominantly sort of run by these towns.
Well, we know of other cases where the dads went to try and rescue their daughters and were prosecuted themselves. Sam, listen, can we take your name? Can I give you a call off air?
I'd like to get some sort of like help from you guys for this lass and a sister.
Yeah, well, no, I'll give you, if you could leave your number with my team, and I'll give you a call off air when we finish the show, and perhaps we can pursue this, see what we can do. Sam, I really appreciate your call. I know it's not your real name, but I appreciate you getting in touch. Thank you for that. 11:36 is the time. We'll go to a break, and we are going to be talking about at least some good news. Justin Trudeau is leaving as the Canadian Prime Minister. Also going to talk about the ASLEF union telling train drivers not to walk on 2 inches of snow that led to some 10 trains being cancelled on Sunday. I mean, people, for the love of God, it's just snow. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:39 is the time. Look, we've been talking about absolutely misery stories so much this week. Let's at least talk about a good news story. We predicted it on the show yesterday. Justin Trudeau announced yesterday that he has resigned as the leader of the Liberal Party there in Canada and is standing down as Prime Minister as soon as a new leader can be chosen. One of the replacements, by the way, a former Bank of England Governor, Mark Carney, is in the running, very interestingly. Well, let's talk about this with Will Jones. He's editor of the Daily Sceptic here in the UK and joins us now. Hello, Will.
Hi, Julia. Good to be with you.
Thank you very much, Steve, for joining me. I thought of you guys as soon as I heard the news, and I was in my kitchen, I was washing up, and I was cheering away. And I mean, again, I think we're all quite sad to see the back of Canada's first black Prime Minister, because, my God, that man blacked up more often more than he cleaned his teeth. Quite the most extraordinary thing for someone who claims to be so woke, but there we are. But the reason why I thought of you guys at Daily Sceptic was you guys were so good at actually, telling the world and telling this country about what was really going on in Canada, outrageously, when we saw the truck drivers standing up against basically mandatory vaccine passports for truck drivers, and started this fantastic protest against Justin Trudeau's authoritarian lockdown policies and vaccine policies. And the clampdown from Justin Trudeau was absolutely extraordinary. And the way he's been hailed as this wonderful liberal leader, when he carried out a policy which, frankly, the mullahs in Tehran would be proud of, I find absolutely extraordinary. What do you think his legacy is?
Well, it's fantastic to see the back of Justin Trudeau, the man described as Canada's worst ever Prime Minister, and rightly described as that. I think he's one of the last democratically elected leaders who imposed these draconian lockdowns and COVID restrictions to fall. And as the public turns against these zealots with their extreme so-called progressive ideologies dressed up as a supposed moderate centrism, they all thought it was such a political masterstroke to imprison and mistreat their populations during the pandemic in 2020 and 2021. And it certainly looked that way for a time. But Trudeau, actually, he was punished. There was a backlash when he actually decided it was a good idea to call an election in the middle of the pandemic in 2021 to try to capitalise on his supposed popularity, and found that he wasn't really so popular after all. That backfired on him. And it was all downhill from there. His most notorious moment, as you said, was when he invoked the Emergencies Act, a decision later ruled unconstitutional by Canada's Constitutional Court. He invoked the Emergencies Act to crush the Freedom Convoy, the protest, that early 2022 protest by truckers. Incredible scenes from Ottawa that we all saw that went around the world against vaccine mandates and expanded into protest against all kinds of COVID restrictions and all of that. And he invoked that act, confiscated property, froze bank accounts, and
froze bank accounts of people who donated, $20 to the cause. There was a crowdfunder, wasn't there, to help fund these truck drivers and their protests, and people who donated, and millions was raised. That money was basically seized until there was an outcry and the money had to be given back. But actually, people, there were some cafe owners who just, we support these people, gave $20. Their bank accounts were frozen. It was the most outrageous overreach by a supposedly Liberal government.
Absolutely appalling. And there was a backlash against that as well. That was really not popular, as you imagine. You can see that in his polling. There was his disapproval ratings went up. They never recovered after that. He's not the only one, of course. Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. Jacinda. Another authoritarian dictator, if you like, from the COVID era, who was turfed out. These populations, they turned against these leaders who thought it was such a good idea to imprison their populations, because when the population was petrified, terrified by their politicians and by the media.
But this is the thing. We're constantly told, and I was tweeting about this yesterday, and people were saying, weren't they acting on the information they had at the time? No, they weren't. Same as our government. They didn't have information that said that was necessary. Virtually all the information we have on COVID, we had back in March 2020. And that's what's so extraordinary, is that governments like British government, the New Zealand government, the Canadian government, others, they terrified the living daylights out of the public deliberately to then impose lockdowns, and then said, people want these things, and then tried to impose vaccine mandates and the like, and people rose up against it, and it is extraordinary that people did. But what amazes me is that he was still fated as this wonderful woke right-on liberal. He was someone who would correct people's pronouns when they he'd go off to a trade delegation representing Canada, whose economy now, by the way, is completely in the toilet, so same as ours because of this obsession, and then would worry about are you all using the correct pronouns of the indigenous people? And he's like, worried about stuff which, frankly, is just stuff that most people just think is utterly irrelevant and stupid. But this crackdown on truck drivers, what amazes me is that there was no public outcry about this from governments, from other G7 leaders, and also very little coverage of it in mainstream media. I knew all about this, and I've discussed this with people, members of my family, friends, and I've said, because of this crackdown, they go, what are you talking about? This truckers' protest. They knew nothing about it, and it was basically written off. Again, we've just got this at the moment. If someone disagrees with you, they're just a far-right, climate conspiracist or whatever, or something else. But Justin Trudeau went on camera and described those truckers protesting against having their bodily autonomy taken away from them and their livelihoods. He called them racist, misogynistic, transphobic, randomly, and every other word under the sun, and accusing them of stuff. This is classic, authoritarian playbook, and yet fated, and even the reports, BBC, Sky, ITV, talking about this man as if he was some, demigod of liberal values, when he was quite the opposite.
And Mark Carney, who's tipped to be one of his replacements, of course, former governor of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada, he described the trucker protests as sedition and insurrection. Extraordinary. We've heard those words in other contexts as well. These are authoritarian terms. These were protests against extreme measures, the like of which Western countries, supposed free countries, have never seen before. And yet these are the terms that these so-called liberal leaders, and he's trying to now lead the Liberal Party. No wonder it's tanking in the polls. No wonder it's set for a landslide defeat to the Conservative Party in the forthcoming elections.
Yeah, I've got quite high hopes of the Conservative Party, led by Pierre Poilievre. And you know, he seems to be, you know, very much genuine. I mean, I would say a proper classical liberal. But you said that this was the last prime minister, last world leader, you know, who imposed these things, and who's still standing. And yet, of course, I mean, you know, Macron's still there in France, isn't he? And weirdly, you know, Keir Starmer, who called for more lockdowns, more restrictions, vaccine mandate, you name it, he called for everything. He's now since been elected. Is Britain just bucking the trend of what's happening across Europe and indeed America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and everywhere else?
Absolutely. As Macron, of course, essentially lost his election and is clinging on, but is on his way out. Britain, very much an outlier now with its left-wing government, sneaking in, of course, with this loveless landslide because the Tories were so useless over the last 14 years and have completely let down their voters and the population. And the split of that vote between, as we know from all the analysis that's been done with, the split of the vote between the Reform and the Tories, the split of the right-wing vote, really let in the left. Yeah. But they're no more popular than anywhere else.
No, that is true, isn't it? It's just a weird quirk of our system. But, I mean, just finally, do you think the lesson will be learned by politicians who all thought, I'm going to be very, very popular because I'm pushing lockdowns and vaccine mandates and all of that, and that actually, as each of them has tumbled, like, you know, dominoes falling, do you think that the lesson will be learned that, you know what, voters might say they like this stuff, but when they actually get the bill for it all later and their freedoms have been taken away and their health and mental health has been taken away, their children's education and their livelihoods, and they're paying taxes to cover the £400 billion cost as we are in this country, do you think that politicians might think twice next time?
I think so. I think that there has been a turning against. I think that although they're not necessarily admitting it out loud or saying it because they don't want to, because psychologically, you know, they can't admit that all that they did and supported and all that we sacrificed was wrong. I think that there is definitely a huge reluctance now to support those things with this new virus outbreak that's supposedly going on in China. I don't know if you've seen about that. But reading the news reports, there's definitely a note of much more caution among the people speaking about that, saying, oh, we've learned a lot since COVID. And I think...
But the mask nutters are all back, though, Will. They're never going to go away, the mask lunatics. But there we are. Will Jones, editor of The Daily Sceptic, you've done fantastic work on all of this. Thank you so much. Quick word from Claire Pearsall on this. I mean, about, you know, Canada's first black Prime Minister standing down?
Yes, the man who believes that a trans woman is a woman. He's gone.
I think if you don't agree with that, you're probably, as we've been discussing this morning, far right.
Well, there you go. So I'm glad I'm in the far right camp on that one.
I just hope you're using the correct pronouns about him because he feels very strongly about that. His fight against climate change as well. I mean...
Yeah. How about, you know, looking at inflation or housing?
Literally wrong on everything.
Yes.
I mean, wrong on everything.
It was a good check, wasn't it? What does Justin Trudeau think? I'm thinking the opposite.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
Right.
Also, never blacked up. But there we are. I mean,
strangely,
I don't even necessarily think that intrinsically going in fancy dress, like you've got to dress up as Michael Jackson and you're white and you've got a black. I don't think that is racist. But apparently, this is a man who doesn't think that men putting on woman face. Because that's what the trans thing is. That's not offensive at all.
No, but you can black up.
So difficult to keep up with the rules. But also, like, literally, the man never spent a Saturday night not in blackface. I mean, it was the most extraordinary thing. College, he's literally blacked up the entire time. How? I mean, he's younger than me. How was that a thing? It wasn't even a thing when I was young, for goodness sake. Anyway, this is a strange old world. 11:50 this time. We're going to go to a break. We're going to be talking about the train drivers who can't walk on 2 inches of snow to run the trains. That's why we saw loads of cancellations at the weekend. We'll talk to Norman Baker, former Transport Minister, up next about that. This is Talk.
and he's sitting there, and what's being done about it? Nothing. I mean,
well, that's not.
And the spurious reason that he was
the
put
reason,
in for,
yeah, but the reason, Errol,
his reason that he was put in because he didn't attend a court appearance. I mean, that's laughable, you know. I mean, that's totally laughable.
Well, I mean, the fact is that he had an opportunity to not be in contempt of court. He chose to be in contempt of court, and that's why he's in prison. So he's in there really because of his own actions, Errol.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
Very good morning to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. And apparently, according to a Labour guest earlier, far-right presenters like me, hello, and guests like Claire Pistol, former Conservative Government Advisor. Don't forget, we'll get to more of your calls in the next hour about Robert Jenrick saying that some immigrants coming to Britain, use the word some, not everybody, some, coming to Britain have backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women which had led to the grooming gang scandal. What's your reaction to that? 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Anything else you want to say on all that topic, do keep your calls coming in. Get some of your messages as well. First up, though, let's talk about trains. Were you trying to get a train on Sunday? A lot of bad weather, a lot of snow in lots of parts of the country. But if you were trying to get a train, in particular, in particular areas, services between Liverpool and London, they didn't run for several hours on Sunday morning. Was it because of the snow? Well, it sort of was. Train services had to be cancelled after the trade union, ASLEF, told their drivers they couldn't walk on 2 inches of snow because it didn't meet health and safety advice. Deep sighs, everybody. Let's talk to Norman Baker. He's a former Lib Dem MP and former Transport Minister and joins us now. Hello to you, Norman.
Morning, Julia. Happy New Year. If not too late to say that.
It's a little bit pathetic, isn't it, that train drivers can't walk through 2 inches of snow to go to work, isn't it?
Well, look, I mean, whoever decided this, some shop steward somewhere has told the drivers not to drive the trains, I imagine, and they've complied with that request from that kind of overzealous official. But of course it's ridiculous. I mean, yes, the path should have been cleared, I suppose. An Alstom run the depot and could have done that. But the reaction to that is one of two things. Either you get on with it and walk through 2 inches of snow, heaven forbid, and risk your whatever you're risking, walking through 2 inches of snow and get on your train and complain afterwards that the path wasn't cleared, or actually you get a broom out and clear it yourself.
Yeah, it seems to me like the rest of us go, what amazes me, it's like when schools are closed because there's a bit of snow, it's people might fall over in the playground and things like that. You think, but these people seem to be perfectly capable of, you know, walking to the cafe or the pub or going out to the shops or going to the local park and going sledging. It does seem as well. I mean, we can't have our country, you know, just coming to a halt because there's a couple of inches of snow. And what's extraordinary also, these are the drivers, these are all Avanti West Coast services, which are pretty bad as it is. The drivers are among those given a 15% pay rise by the new Labour government, and their salaries are just under 70 grand a year. For just under 70 grand a year for driving a train, I think you can get a shovel out and clear a bit of snow, can't you? Or, I don't know, put on your walking boots or your wellies and just walk over it like the rest of us do.
Snowflakes rather than snow, I think, is probably the conclusion here. But I mean, look, there are two things going on. One is overzealous interference from a union official, which is absurd, frankly, in the circumstances. But the other thing is a kind of cultural issue about snow, because, you know, going back 20, 30 years, people just got on with it. You know, I remember being shoved out the door when I was about 6 years old in deep snow in Aberdeen told to get to school.
Totally.
And that's how it was. These days, I mean, you get to -1, -2, and the shop's shut, for goodness sake.
Do you think that's part of the issue? We've got, like, you know, the weather warnings, OK, flooding, you know, there's a risk to life, but people are dying, we understand that. And it's useful if we're told, hey, guys, it's going to be snowing, you know, don't go on, don't plan a long journey up a mountain pass. I mean, but are we not losing an awful lot of common sense, but also scaremongering an awful lot in this country about, oh, it's going to be hot, oh, it's going to rain, oh, it's going to snow? I mean, can't we, I don't know, put our noses outside the front door and go, oh, it's really cold today and there's white stuff on the ground, and work it out for themselves?
I think people are being cosseted and they're being controlled, in a sense, by society, by governments, by organisations like Network Rail. You know, told to hold a handrail going down the escalator. Told not to, you must face the direction of travel. Told it might be wet, so watch what you're watching. Watch where you're walking.
Take a bottle of water on the train.
This nonsensical approach to taking away the freedom that people have to make up their own minds and take their own judgment on matters.
And make daft decisions if they choose. And take people have different attitude to it. Look, I took my 9-year-old cage diving with great white sharks in Cape Town. Some of us have a different attitude to risk than others.
Yeah, and let people make up their own minds. But the idea that the world should come to a stop when it's because 2 inches of snow or because it's -1 on the thermometer is just frankly absurd. But also, when I was in Sweden, the Arctic Circle, I said to Swedes up there, what happens with kids going to school in Sweden? Do they ever not go to school? He said, we stop them going to school when it gets to -48.
Yeah, we take it. Now, that said, if we lived in a country that was always very hot or always very, very cold, we would have everything, our services, our transport system geared around it. And there is actually a thing regarding gauges of the railways that we actually, to have them operate most of the time, you can't have them fitted to basically how Norway would have their fitted because of the extreme temperatures they have. So there is a reason why some of our infrastructure doesn't work that well for 3 or 4 days every 5 years. And I think we can live with that. But it's about an attitude, isn't it? I think that's the key thing. And especially with, trade unions pushing train drivers who've just got a massive pay rise when people are really struggling and can't get around, not running trains because they can't walk on 2 inches of snow. That doesn't sound like a very good message. Do you think, just to go back 10 seconds, do you think that actually the unions they're actually going to do more damage to their members than they're doing benefit?
I think they're harming the members ultimately, and they're certainly not helping the public who are there to serve.
Absolutely. Norman Baker, always appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much. Former Transport Minister, who's a Lib Dem MP, of course. Lots more coming up, lots more of your calls. We're going to be talking to Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative leader, about this ongoing row over the grooming gangs, what Keir Starmer's had to say, and is he jumping on the far-right bandwagon? That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
And a very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, whether you're listening on DAB Plus radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or on your connected device. It's great to have your company. Great to have a lot of you getting in touch as well. Lots of people on the switchboard. We've been talking, obviously, yesterday and today, and I think all last week when I was away, talking about Elon Musk and his attacks on Keir Starmer over the grooming rape gangs scandal. Keir Starmer was asked about it yesterday while we were on air. We talked about it on the show yesterday, and he's hit back, and he called those people who were calling for a grooming gang inquiry, the politicians, very specific, the politicians, not the actual victims of the mass rape gangs, not the whistleblowers, who people like Maggie Oliver, who blew the whistle on what was happening in Rochdale, gave up her career that she loved and her livelihood to blow the whistle. He's called the politicians calling for it far-right bandwagon jumpers. He's also accused Elon Musk of spreading lies and misinformation. Well, Elon Musk has hit back, basically say, that Elon Musk saying that Keir Starmer is kind of part of the problem, and he said that he's refusing those demands for a national inquiry because it would show he was deeply complicit in the mass rapes in exchange for votes, basically saying, it's Muslim votes that you're afraid of losing. Keir Starmer, I say, attacking politicians here. Kemi Badenoch, the leader of the Tories, hitting back at Keir Starmer, accusing him of smear tactics. Robert Jenrick this morning in an interview and backing up a tweet he posted on the 4th of January, and he'd talked about mass migration from particular countries causing this, or leading us to this grooming and rape gang scandal. Asked this morning where he stood by, he said, yes, some immigrants coming to Britain. So the key word there is some. Some. Not all, of course not. But some have, he says, backward, frankly, medieval attitudes to women, which had led to the grooming gang scandal. I want to know your thoughts on what he has to say. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk, then your message to 87222. You can get in touch on X at TalkTV. Feel free to tag in Elon Musk. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. Claire Pissell is a former Conservative government advisor. She's been joining us throughout the show. Just very briefly before we go to our guest, Ian Douglas-Smith. We had a Labour guest on earlier saying that, people like me, I'm far right, and these people are far right, and people are basically on a far right bandwagon. Does that mean literally like most of the country are far right now, if we're going to be using that term?
I think it does. It's anybody they disagree with suddenly is far right. They don't seem to hold the same contempt for anybody on the left. If you are, communist on the far left, it's almost as bad as being a sort of disgraced grandpa at the corner, isn't it? You just sort of go, oh dear, never mind.
Yes, but you might be considering someone misguided, but at least not evil.
Yes, whereas far right is an insult.
Yeah,
isn't it? That's the point, isn't it? This is the swastika-wearing individual.
That's what it means.
And they take great delight in that.
Absolutely. Well, look, that's we're talking about. Also going to be talking in this hour about obese patients and smokers facing being sent to the back of the queue for NHS surgery under government plans. They'll only be given a date for their treatment if they've been assessed as fit to proceed. I was under the illusion that was already the case on the basis of whether it's IVF or whether it's a hip operation. There's no point giving you a hip operation if the reason why you need it is because you're obese. If you're not going to lose the weight, then it's not going to work. But also, the UK, we are told, is on the cusp of an electric car charging point revolution, with more being put in. The number of plug-in stations set to increase considerably in the next 2 years. I'm sure that'll work out well, and we'll all be buying our electric cars, won't we? We'll talk to Ross Clark about that. Loads more coming up. Right now, let's turn to Sir Ian Douglas-Smith, Conservative MP, former Conservative Party leader as well. Very good afternoon to you, Sir Ian.
Afternoon.
Thanks very much. So, are you far right?
Well, it seems that everybody is far right, according to Keir Starmer, most of the British public, and any other normal commentator. The truth is that where he fails, and the Labour Party, by the way, I've been in this place for a long time, and every time a Labour government gets into a problem, they accuse everybody that's attacking them of being far right. It happens all the time. Fascist is normally used. They haven't used it this time, but it's normally fascists, Nazis. These are always hurled at you. I've never heard a Conservative attack everybody else for being communist. It doesn't seem to stick, does it? But
it doesn't have the same connotations either.
No. But the real issue is the people that originally raised this, by the way, Anne Cryer, was a highly respected Labour MP, and they attempted to silence her because she was saying there is a problem in these areas. There's a cultural problem where these gangs, these mostly, as I say, she was referring to people of Pakistani heritage, young men, not all, and you make the point earlier on, it's absolutely true. The vast, vast majority of people go about their lives and live proper lives and don't do this sort of thing. But there is a culture of some of these gangs. They weren't just doing this, by the way, they were dealing drugs as well and various other things. And the reality is that they preyed on these very vulnerable girls. And many of these girls were coming from dysfunctional, broken homes, and many were in care, coming out of care, you know, really, really with very little education and not a lot of understanding, and they were preyed upon because they were vulnerable. So why don't we focus on the girls instead of focusing on what we think is the motivation behind why you want to raise an issue? And the truth is, the report that they refer to, which they want to bring about now, the reason why there was delay earlier was because the then Conservative government was concerned that it hadn't really covered the whole of the issue. For example,
now, this is the thing, because this report from Sir Professor Alexis Jay was a 7-year report. They actually had 4 different chairs. It took 7 years. They only spent 10 days talking about the grooming gang specific issue. It was very wide-ranging. It was church abuse, everything else. But it was reported in 2022, not a single one of those recommendations was brought into law. Whatever concerns the last Conservative government had, they didn't actually enact any of those recommendations.
Yeah, I'm not here to defend them, by the way. What I want to say very simply is the reason why the debate was going on behind was because this hadn't confronted the issue of the gangs. I think the word gangs in the report occurs once in the whole of it. And there are many other towns that had a problem and they weren't even looked at. So the reason why you've got people now saying that there should be a proper inquiry, it's because it didn't deal with culture, it didn't deal with location, and it didn't deal with the fact that we have a huge problem over gangs, and these particular gangs and ethnic gangs as well. So these were not dealt with really properly in the report.
And that's the key.
I think we should have implemented recommendations immediately, but we should have said these bits need to be redone and looked at again. So
there's an argument. I mean, when people who are victims and when people are who were whistleblowers are saying we need to have a full inquiry, I'm of kind of the view that if they feel that's what's necessary, that I'm inclined to bow to their greater knowledge. However, I do worry about these things. They cost hundreds of millions of pounds. They take many, many years. Do we learn anything new? What we really need is people to be held to account. We need the men who committed these crimes to be arrested, to be prosecuted and to be hopefully convicted and jailed. And by the way, a lot of these people who've been convicted already are on their way out, already out of jail, because again, you get 10 years and then you only serve 5. Sorry, that nonsense has got to stop, and I've been saying that for 20 years. You get 10 to 10, you serve 10, not even a day less than that. But also, we need to have the people who turned a blind eye, who knew what was going on, the social workers, the police, the counsellors and everything. We need those people prosecuted. Now, what do you make of this new law that Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, suddenly made this emergency announcement last night, promising this law to be brought in the spring, the bill to be brought in the spring, to tackle child abuse cover-ups? Basically, if you're a professional, if you're in a position of trust and you are aware of child abuse allegations and you do not raise them, you do not take them to the authorities, you will be guilty not just of professional misconduct, but also criminal action.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what we should be doing, no question at all. The real issue here, though, is that the reason why there is a problem is because we haven't dealt with the issue of the clash between the culture that was a problem at the time, which is you must be very careful not to be seen as racist. If you raise this issue, nobody wanted to do it because it would stigmatize them. So they had that as their main issue. And the well-being of these young girls was secondary. In fact, so secondary that, as you've seen in some of the cases, they were attacked for being sluts, for being, they're up to it. It's not their problem. It's not the boys' problem. That was the problem. Disparage those who were the vulnerable so that you don't have to deal with the problem of these gangs and particularly these ones that had become culturally Pakistani young men who were then culturally creating this major problem. And it wasn't just in the north, it was in places like Oxford and elsewhere. Some of these places were never looked at. So that's the problem. We have to, yes, absolutely, if you ignore it. But let's get to the reason why you ignored it. You ignored it because many of them were scared stiff or worried that somehow they were going to be stigmatized for having picked on particular individuals from different cultures. The answer is justice has to be blind. And at the end of it all, it doesn't matter who does this stuff, that you want to make sure this can never happen again. And this has been a terrible event.
Well, that's it. I mean, we saw certainly two-tier justice then, and we've been seeing it since post-Southport riots, where we've seen, people who are Muslim carrying weapons, attacking people outside a pub, or marauding and threatening people, not facing any criminal action whatsoever, but people who were attacking Muslims, quite rightly facing action, but people writing tweets, I think, wrongly facing action. We're seeing it right now. There's no reason to think things have changed. I don't know. Robert Jenrick has said in an interview today, he's a Shadow Justice Secretary, that some immigrants coming to Britain have backward, frankly medieval attitudes to women, and that is what led to grooming gangs. Millions of people coming to this country from countries where they have these backward, medieval attitudes to women, coming here, not integrating, not assimilating, no one expecting them to. What a surprise, he's basically saying, I'm paraphrasing, that this has happened. Is he right to raise that?
Well, let me put it like this. I think the issue here, and this has been raised by a number of people from different ethnicities, that we have a problem in sort of the idea of multiculturalism. That is to say, everybody lives their own culture. While everybody can have elements of their own culture involved and all the rest of it, I understand that, and celebrating things that they might do for various religious festivals, that's fine. The problem is you can't let people in the UK develop in completely different lines, because all that happens is you end up with a broken society. What we want is people to come together under a British cultural element with various elements which enrich our society that come from other cultures. We've had immigration from various cultures all over the world all their lives, and they retain some of those cultures, but they accept and assimilate the idea of the concept of Britishness as a culture. Now, I know that may sound old-fashioned, but I think that's the basis of the problem, that we've allowed, and this is where I think so many of those who turned a blind eye did so because they had a view somehow that this was culturally acceptable for certain groups to do certain things. It can never be in Britain for that to happen. I think we need to address that. It's not a far-right issue. It's about being sensible and saying, look, always care about the victims, because they are the marker for what the problem is going on elsewhere. And you need to look at that and say, this can't happen again.
And indeed, and again, people focus, I remember this was first in the news years back, the focus was always like, oh, you can't make it all about, because they said Asian men, it became Pakistani, Muslim men. You can't make it all about that, because they're not the only people committing crimes. These grooming gangs, yes, specifically, are massively overrepresented population, but also, crucially, the reason why they were able to carry on for so long and have so many victims was because of their ethnicity and their religion. That's why they were protected. Talking of far right, the first bit of our conversation was, are you far right? There's news about someone genuinely far right, Jean-Marie Le Pen. The father, of course, of Marine Le Pen, still running, obviously, for the French presidency, the man who was president of the National Front in France from 1972 all the way to 2011, has died at the age of 96. Your reaction to that news, Sirian?
Well, I'm obviously sad for the family, but he wasn't somebody that I supported in any particular way. I thought he is also part of the problem. When you start taking things to the fringes, when you take them to the absolute end, where everything is blamed on those who didn't necessarily live there, who had come in. You can't do that, because the vast majority of those who come to countries want to get on. They come for a reason. They come because they want to improve their lives, etc. So, but it's the extremes of that, if you're not careful, that you badge everybody with. But certainly he was a formidable politician in France. Got to be, I think, in the runoff against... forgotten which president it was now.
He did quite a few. I mean, Marine Le Pen's on, she's done two, and I think he did three or something. But the vote of the Le Pens has gone up each time, has it not? Two things more I want to talk to you about. One is this debate in Parliament yesterday as a result of 3 million people signing an online petition. We spoke to the man who did the petition, basically saying, look, the Labour government promised various things. They completely lied. I think we should have another general election. 3 million people signed that. A Labour MP basically said yesterday that the general election petition was a product of foreign interference. Is she right?
I've no idea, but it's come to me over time. If I'd seen her, I'd have said to her very good, don't attack the public. It's never a good idea. They're the people that put you here and can get rid of you. The best thing is to debate it and to say why you don't agree with it. And that's the purpose of Parliament, is, once you start turning your guns on, these people out there that are all from overseas somewhere, well, maybe some of them are, I don't know how this was all attested, but there is a rule in Parliament that when it crosses the 100,000 threshold, you get a debate. So just go and deal with it.
Them's the rules. Just finally, as a former Work and Pensions Secretary, it's an extraordinary story emerged in the last 24 hours. More than £500 million of taxpayers' money was handed out to dead people in just 5 years because of a pension rule. Mistaken payouts were made and admitted by the government minister yesterday. They doled out £511 million in state pensions and pension credits since 2019 to dead people. Less than half of the money has been recouped, and basically the losses would be enough, £257 million alone, to cover the scrapped winter fuel payments for up to 1.3 million pensioners. How does this happen?
Well, it happens because records aren't kept properly. There are breakdowns in how the records work. There are, after all, a lot of pensioners which are paid out all the time. So there's a lot of money goes out the door on pensions on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. So all of these records have to be kept up to date. The question is, how did they slip through the net? How did their death not get through? Was there criminal activity in all of this? Sometimes there is, where you don't tell them that somebody's died and you keep receiving the checks and say, oh, well, you didn't know what this was all about. So there's probably a bit of that going on in there as well. But I have to say, the one thing I am grateful for is not have to be that minister that goes to the disgraceful. It's pilloried for something that somebody once said when I went in to be Secretary of State. What you've got to understand, it was an ex-minister, he said, what you've got to understand, somewhere deep in the bowels of those thousands of civil servants, someone is working away to destroy you completely. And the thing is, they don't even know they're doing it.
Oh, that sounds like a very fair description. Sir Doug Smith, always good to talk to you. Tory MP, former Conservative Party leader, and of course Work and Pension Secretary as well. Claire Pearsall, let's leave that aside. Well, again, it's like, a small matter of £500 million over that. I mean, you think a bit of joined up thinking by government. It's a legal duty to notify that someone has died. Yeah. So why is that not just automatically passed on? I mean, the lack of joined up thinking is mind-blowing, isn't it? He made the point about a new inquiry and failures of the last Tory government, which you were part of as a special advisor in the Home Office, and also how we're all far right now. Your thoughts on what he had to say?
It's sort of quite interesting, though. Yes, we are all far right now. With respect to the inquiry, I think we need to look at specifics on grooming gangs. I've come more and more round to that position.
Yeah, my initial view was that wasn't really needed, but I hadn't really realised the extent to which that Professor Alexis J. inquiry. I remember you covering it on the news, but how much it didn't touch on the grooming gangs.
I remember sort of reading it and having a look at the recommendations and thinking that was a very good idea, but other than that, you sort of didn't really take it into context.
Do we need to know more, or do we need to just hold people to account and make sure that the people... I mean, again, we know it's still happening right now. There are girls right now. I mentioned on the show yesterday, I've got a friend who's a detective, and part of her job is to deal with these underage girls who are absolutely convinced that the man in his 30s who meets her from school in his flash car is her boyfriend and loves her, even though he hands her around his friends for them to have sex and anal sex and goodness knows what with them, that they're implying her with drugs and drink, that he is her boyfriend and loves her. And they have to try and persuade these girls that they are being groomed and they are being raped. And I mean, it seems to me that it's like they won't give evidence because they don't believe it, or they'll be threatened. I mean, we've seen loads of cases where, these girls went willingly. Well, yeah, because if you didn't go willingly, you got beaten and tortured more. Yeah. Oh, and then they threatened to do it to your kid's sister too. So what a surprise. You did what you were told to do. But do we just not need to stop what's happening now? And focusing on what's happened 10, 20 years ago means that we don't focus. Should not massive resources we put in. We need to round up everybody right now. We need to have courts that are running 24/7 and get these people behind bars. And by the way, keep them there for their whole sentences.
Yeah, there need to be consequences and punishments, swift and harsh. We saw it over the summer that Keir Starmer can do that. for people on the internet. He needs to do it for this, because you are, unless you put people off, unless there is a massive deterrent, say, we are going to get you, we are going to put you in jail, this is going to be very uncomfortable.
And then, by the way, we're going to deport you.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, nothing is going to change.
If you weren't born here, we can get rid of you.
Yeah, we can.
And a lot of these men were not born here.
No.
They the dual nationalities, but they dropped, funnily enough, they dropped their Pakistan nationality anyway. Yeah. Just finally, quick, Jean-Marie Le Pen has died at the age of 96. Talk about far right.
Yes.
Genuinely someone who was far right. He was president of the National Front. I mean, there are clues here. He has died at the age of 96.
Incredibly divisive figure. My sympathy with his family. I don't hold much sympathy with him. I don't believe in anything that he particularly stood for. But an interesting character nonetheless, and I don't think we'll see the likes of it again.
But that said, the likes of the National Front, the likes of the BNP, the likes of the Tommy Robinsons of this world, the likes of all these people, they are only created when mainstream politicians don't talk about stuff which needs to be talked about, which ordinary people are seeing on their streets, in their homes, in their schools, in their workplaces. And when everyone says, oh, no, don't talk about that, that's when people like Jean-Marie Le Pen get support. And, you know, I don't know when politicians are going to learn that lesson, but shouting far right at everybody definitely doesn't work. 12:23 is the time. Up next, we'll take your calls. Give us a call right now, 0344 499 1000 if you want to have your say. This is Talk.
On and accuse us of being lying and fraudulent about our membership numbers.
Wasn't she asked to apologise?
We got a number of different media channels and journalists in to check the actual database, the back end, proved that we were right, she was completely wrong, and just said, look, we all make mistakes, just apologise, Kemi. She's refused to do that, so Nigel announced over the weekend that we're going to make our own constituency seat a key target at the next general election, just to give Kemi a little bit of something to think about.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Thank you so much for your company. Still with me, Claire Pearsall, former Conservative government advisor. Let's get to your calls. Lots coming in about, we're all far right now because we were asking for an inquiry on the grooming and rape gang scandal. Try and get all the words in the right order. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000 if you want to have your say. Phil has done just that. He's in Stafford. Hello, Phil. Hello, Phil. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hello there. What do you want to say, my darling?
I got quite wound up by that left-wing commentator you had on earlier.
Former Labour Party spokesman. Yes, he was. Yes, it was quite an interesting conversation, was it not?
Yeah, it seems as if the primary objective is to stick the label of far right on you, and it's job done. You're discredited. But I'm reminded of something that Professor Matt Goodwin, I don't know if you must have heard of him.
I'm a huge fan of Matt Goodwin. Annoyingly, he's in a contract elsewhere, so we can't have him on.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still a professor, but he was a professor of political science. And he, I've looked up the quote. I can't find his quote, but I found a quote from another political scientist who says that the far right rejects the essence of democracy, that is popular sovereignty and majority rule. So I think what the left are trying to do is conflate the whole of the right and squash it down so that these terms become meaningless.
Yeah, well, exactly. But again, it's like if you call everyone a bigot and everyone racist and everyone far right, then those words... Well, and everyone's a Nazi. Those words cease to have any meaning. But as you say, far right, you're basically sort of anti-democratic. I mean, far right is racist. It is about deporting people because of their skin colour, and that's the policy of the BNP. Jean-Marie Le Pen of the National Front in France. I mean, it's very different from someone saying, I don't think it's a good idea to import people from third world countries who have medieval views about women and girls and then not prosecute them because everyone's a bit uncomfortable about it when there's mass rape of 11-year-old white girls. I mean, those are different things.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an ex-police officer, retired some years ago.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a lot of experience. We did have quite a lot of girls that went missing, and nobody knew where they'd gone, and no one was asking too many questions. So this has been going on. I mean, there was a couple of other quick points I wanted to make.
Please do.
One was our preoccupation back in the 80s, and this is going back as far as the 80s, was with Muslim terrorist gangs. I was told as a very new cop, be careful of stopping large groups of Asian men because we have intelligence that they're going to the Middle East to be trained in terrorist tactics.
Wow.
And that was back as far as the 80s.
Yeah, long before 2011, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this, and the other point I wanted to make is I think that the inquiry that needs to be undertaken should be pursuing those people who have turned a blind eye, and there should be police 100%. Officers who are imprisoned over this.
Absolutely. Again, all good police officers are as horrified about this as every other person. Yeah, Phil, thank you for your call, and I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Let's going to move on. Let's going to go to Roy, who is in Wiltshire. Hello, Roy.
Hello, how are we doing?
Very well indeed, sir. What do you want to say?
It's very interesting to hear the comments of the last person. But what I can tell you, the Labour government were quite well aware of the situation in regard to sexual abuse at schools. Now, government inspectors came on numerous occasions from 1970 up until 1986. The majority of them were in the Labour government, right? And on top of that, Starmer was involved in the closure of our cases, and I say our cases because there is about between 200 and 500 young men that were being abused.
Are you saying, Roy? Sorry, are you saying you were a victim of abuse as a boy at school?
That's correct.
And this
it's quite well known. It's written on the BBC website that the government and the inspectorate of those schools knew that their abuse was going on, and they shut it down.
What do you mean when you say shut it down? They shut down the investigation?
No, they shut down the actual the whole thing. They didn't want to. They didn't want to know. They were.
They didn't. I'm sorry. I just want to clarify. They didn't stop the abuse. They just shut down people talking about it.
Well, on one occasion, one of the social workers from the social services office in Stoke wrote to Gloucestershire County Council and actually turned around and said, quote, "This man's being abused. What are you going to do about it?" They actually sent it to the same man that actually abused him.
God, yeah, I mean, that's the point. But we know what was happening. We know there's be lots of allegations about what happened in schools, in care homes, at the church, all the various different churches. It's on a grand scale, and there seems to be so little action. Everyone was going to say lessons will be learned. They never appeared to be so. Roy, thank you for your call. I'm so sorry that happening to you, and just Claire Pearsall. I mean, it is just. Again, it's just something that most normal, right-thinking people can't really get their head around, that people do this. But also that we know there are bad people. What we can't get around also is that supposedly good people who are supposed to be safeguarding children, police, teachers, social workers, care home workers and that, don't act to do anything about it. That still blows my mind. I can't really get my head around that.
If you knew about something, why wouldn't you report it? Why wouldn't you look out for the kids who are in your care, that you are responsible for? It's just, I wouldn't think twice about it if it were me. And I've done my safeguarding training.
Even if it meant losing your career, and that's the extraordinary thing. And people like, say, Maggie Oliver, who, had to basically, it was a choice. You can either continue your career that you love, or you can speak out on something and try and do some good. I mean, no one should have to make that decision. We've got to sort out the whistleblowing thing, whether it's about, is there a nurse who might be killing babies in this neonatal ward in a hospital, or is there a surgeon who's really not up to his job, or is someone being abused? We have got to get the safeguarding issue sorted out in this country, and the whistleblowing as something that people should be rewarded for. Management bosses should be saying thank you for coming forward, not we're going to pay you off, sign an NDA and sod off.
Exactly. They need support. As soon as they make an allegation like that, they need to be supported in that, because it is a really big thing for some people. Yeah, absolutely protected. Their names should be protected. I don't think innocent names need to be bandied around.
No, that's true.
Which always happens.
I think that's such a key issue, isn't it? Thank you very much for your calls. Lots more texts and tweets I want to get to. I haven't got to really many of those at all. Coming up next, we are going to be talking about obese patients and smokers being sent to the back of the NHS queue when it comes to surgery. Is that the right decision, though? We'll talk to an obesity nurse consultant about that. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile. The home of common sense. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Purcell is still with us as well. Let's talk right now about the NHS. Now, yesterday, of course, the Prime Minister once again setting out his agenda on the stuff that really matters, like dealing with the NHS and cutting waiting lists. And, of course, completely and utterly hijacked by the Elon Musk grooming and rape gang scandal row. But one of the things that the government is looking to do is to put obese patients and smokers at the back of the queue for NHS surgery. Reforms announced by Keir Starmer will mean that patients will only be given a date for an operation if they've been assessed as fit to proceed. So tens of thousands of patients waiting for hip and knee surgery will be asked to first undergo a 12-week weight loss programme, and smokers will be urged to quit. It's all going to be relevant to their actual treatment and whether it will work. Claire, would you support that?
I thought we already had that.
That's what I mean. It's certainly the case for a lot of treatments. I know, like IVF, like if you're overweight, we won't give it to you. There's no point.
Yeah, it's the same with any kind of knee or hip operations, because you're an anaesthetic risk if you are obese.
And the whole point
the whole point is to keep the joint healthy.
Yeah.
So you need to lose weight. That's the whole point. But for some people, it's a vicious circle. They can't exercise because the joint is
you don't need to exercise to lose weight, though. That's one of the biggest lies, isn't it?
No, just don't stop eating crisps. Chocolates.
I said, it's
cheese.
I'm just making me hungry now. Let's talk about this with Tony Russo, who's an obesity nurse consultant, joins us. Very good afternoon to you, Tony.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. First of all, is this policy already largely in place anyway? And secondly, do you approve of the policy?
I don't approve of the policy. I think it's in place to an extent, but that's more to do with outcomes, because you don't want people, smokers obviously have chest problems, and people that are very heavy, it can affect things like joints, like the lady said a few minutes ago. But the thing is, you have to understand, it's a bit of a smokescreen, really. It's a bit like when they fiddle the unemployment figures to say fewer people are unemployed. So I think this is just a way of making the waiting list sort of smaller.
Because you're not technically on it because you've not been given a date.
That's right. And I think that, smokers as well. I mean, if you're talking about money, they're the people that pay the most tax. So arguably, they should be at the top of the queue. But obviously, I'm not suggesting that clinically. Yeah. But I think that, people that are carrying a lot of excess weight are costing us a lot of money as a state to keep them heavy. So it actually makes sense to get them well again. And if it's for a joint replacement, they're more likely to get back to work and be productive.
Well, except if they really want to be productive, want to get back to work, then surely one of the things they could do, and given one of the main reasons people need to have joint replacements is because of obesity. So if they're actually motivated, get back to work and get themselves healthy, they'll go, oh, OK, fair enough. I mean, that's a great motivation. You can't have that surgery until you've lost some weight. We're going to help you do it. I mean, seems to me to be a perfectly reasonable requirement. I remember certainly when I was looking at IVF, and I mean, I wasn't able to get anything on the NHS because I was over 40. Anyone just driving from Eastern Europe could just go and get it on the NHS, not a problem. But it seems reasonable to me. Sorry about paying all those taxes all those years. What was I thinking? But it was very, very clear. If you are massively underweight or overweight, your chances of benefiting from IVF are massively reduced. So it makes sense to say, no, you don't want a baby that much if you're not willing to lose the weight to give yourself the best fighting chance of IVF working. So maybe, this isn't something the NHS has spent its money on. I mean, it seems to me these are reasonable requirements where it is relevant to the health outcome. Where it isn't relevant, then it's no one's business, surely.
Well, I agree with you to an extent. I mean, there are some times, if you're having a hernia, for example, where being very heavy is really not going to help you. It's going to actually make the hernia repair fail. So I do think that needs to be taken into account. But everybody is if you talk to the average person that's carrying a lot of extra weight, they don't want to be overweight. They want to lose that weight. But it's been described in the past, our bodies are set up to fight us losing weight. They throw off all sorts of hormones that make us hungry. And it's a bit like giving an incentive and me saying to you, Julia, if I give you £1 million, will you hold your breath for 10 minutes? It's a real incentive, but you physically can't do it. And I think that unless we're going to really look at the causes of obesity and support...
I'm sorry, but if I held my breath for 10 minutes, I'd die. You can lose weight. We know that because millions of people have done it. I've done it. Other people have done it. People who are listening to this have done it. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, look, there's a big difference, isn't there? Like, shall we give this liver transplant to John, who is still drinking 2 bottles of whiskey a day, or to Jane, who used to be, an alcoholic, but has now given up booze for 10 years? Seems to me to be a clear choice, and it's not even a moral choice, just a practical choice. This person is not going to abuse the liver of somebody who's died, which could have gone to someone else. I mean, you can lose weight.
That's happening already.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But that makes sense. But the key thing is, if you can't recover from your knee operation or whatever it is because you are overweight, then helping people to lose weight is a good thing. This idea that somehow being overweight is a disease, it's a load of nonsense. It is hard to get motivated to lose weight, and it's boring as well. However, millions of people manage it. There are plenty of diets that work. The Fast 800, the one pushed by Michael Mosley, absolutely 100% works. I've done it. I'm doing it right now. It absolutely works. It is an absolute nonsense to say that people can't lose weight.
People can lose weight, and most of the people that I look after in my practice have been tremendously successful weight loss. People have lost 10 stone and more, but they generally regain and some interest. So you lose 5 stone, you regain 6. That's because our bodies fight us. So even if
that's because they don't maintain a healthy diet.
Because it's very difficult to maintain it.
It is difficult, but they're still able to do it. It's like people saying it's impossible to give up smoking, apart from the fact that millions of people have given up smoking perfectly successfully.
I think smoking in some ways is easier to give up because it's either you smoke or you don't.
Yeah.
Whereas with eating, you've still got to eat. And
you still have to eat, but you don't have to eat a jumbo-sized family pack of pretzels and a jumbo pizza every day. I mean, we all make choices. People have a right to smoke and have a right, in my view, and a right to be as fat as they want or as thin as they want. I don't care. I believe in bodily autonomy. But when NHS resources are paid for by our taxes, it is perfectly reasonable to say, if you're not willing to do what you need to do to get healthy, I'm not sure why everyone else should bother.
I think we need to support them. I mean, you could equally say
we are supporting them. We're saying we'll give you a 12-week diet plan and help you and give you support and counselling to help you lose weight before you have your operation, but you can't have the operation otherwise. That's
going to cost a lot of money and a lot of staff time to support that. We might just as well ban cyclists because they're more likely to fracture bones or get chest infections.
No, because there is a good to being a cyclist. Well, apart from the fact they're very irritating and don't have lights on and go through red lights. Apart from that, there is a health aspect to that, isn't there? I mean, there's different. Whereas being obese doesn't have a good side.
It doesn't have a good side. And there's definitely a personal responsibility thing. You know, even people that have weight loss surgery, they still have to think about what they do.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people where it becomes a bit of a vicious cycle because they're immobile, so they can't exercise. They probably can't get to a decent
I'm sorry.
shop.
You know, you're an expert on this. You do not need to exercise to lose weight. It helps and it'll help your body generally, but you don't need to exercise to lose weight. You just need to eat less food.
You need to eat the right foods.
You need to eat less food. And you need to eat the right food, but
Not
less
necessarily.
food. If you eat 4,000 calories of the right food, you're still going to put on weight.
Well, you will, but our bodies treat different food substances differently.
I know, but I'm just saying, I mean, I just think we need to stop treating this as some sort of impossible thing to deal with. I mean, I'm not even a fan of Ozempic. I certainly don't want Ozempic on the public purse. I certainly don't want, bariatric surgery on the public purse because, as I said, I'm happy to take people into my spare room, lock them in. I will feed them a calorie-controlled diet, and I can guarantee you, for half the price it costs the NHS to give this surgery and this treatment, I can help them lose weight.
Well, it's an idea, but I don't think it's one that's going to be embraced long term.
But it would work better and it'd be cheaper. Tony Russo, obesity nurse consultant, thank you very much for that. Claire, I doubt you've ever struggled with your weight. You've got, you're very slim and healthy looking. So we're too got this thing in this country, in America. It's almost like, alcoholism is a disease, being obese is a disease. It's, there's no doubt at all. There is a mental health thing. I'm really aware that my husband could just go, we've had a good time on holiday, open bar, restaurants to galore. Yeah, need to shed a few of the Christmas pounds. And he just eats less for a few weeks and loses the weight. And I look at him, it's like, I hate him. I hate him. I mean, he can do that. I think women are often more emotional eaters, more than men. And it is hard, and it is really hard in getting started. But that's where there are diets like the Fast 800 where you could just get really motivated very quickly, and it will the weight will drop off you, and it will work. And if you stick to a healthy diet, you won't put weight back on. It's really that simple. When people go, when people say, well, that diet doesn't work for me, but well, you didn't follow it then, did you?
No, exactly. And they don't. And that's the point. They follow it for 24 hours. get bored. It's a bit difficult. It's not as attractive as a massive bar of chocolate.
So hungry now.
But broccoli is better. I had that last night.
We had fish and broccoli for dinner last night, and we all sat there going, yeah, this is fun.
Yeah,
just sit there going...
It's really difficult. It isn't as interesting, and you want all of the nice food that you have on holiday, the food and drink and the puddings. But
I would eat. I'd eat a kebab or a pizza or a burger every single day of my life. It was up to me. But I also would like to live past the age of 60, and so I make those choices. But anyway, don't expect anyone else to deal with it or pay for it. Then 12:47 is the time. We're going to take a break. Then we're going to be talking about how we are in the brave new wonderful world of electric vehicles, easy to charge them. Oh yes, and more wind power powering everything. Oh. Or are we? We'll talk to Ross Clark about that. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
Us on and accuse us of being lying and fraudulent about our membership numbers.
Wasn't she asked to apologise?
We got a number of different media channels and journalists in to check the actual database, the back end, proved that we were right, she was completely wrong, and just said, look, we all make mistakes, just apologise, Kemi. She's refused to do that, so Nigel announced over the weekend that we're going to make our own constituency seat a key target at the next general election, just to give Kemi a little bit of something to think about.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on the app, on your mobile, the home of common sense. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. The last few moments with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearson also with me, former Conservative government advisor, because you were part of the government that decided to go mad with this net zero nonsense. What a surprise there. There really hasn't been a mass take-up of electric vehicles in this country, partly because they're soddingly well expensive, but also a lot of people want to have a more reliable car if they haven't got anywhere to charge it. I live in a flat. I don't know where the hell I'm supposed to be charging my electric car outside my home. Let's talk about this with Ross Clark. He's author of the brilliant book Not Zero, How an Irrational Target Will Impoverish You, Help China and Won't Even Save the Planet. A very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thanks for joining us. Now, the reason I want to talk to you is because we are told today that the UK is on the quote, cusp of an electric car charging point revolution. I didn't know that was such a thing, but electric car charging point revolution is a thing. The number of plug-in stations set to increase considerably in the next years. That's going to apparently be a game changer. And also, apparently, 2024 was a record year for wind power. So it's all looking up on the issue of clean energy. And people like you and I, well, I mean, let's face it, we're obviously far right, because we were told that by James Matthews from the Labour Party earlier, that even questioning net zero policies makes you far right now. You and I have been wrong about everything, because it's all going to be about electric vehicles, wind power, and that's the future. Do you think that is true?
No, well, we'll start with the wind power. Earlier this week, we had claims that Britain generated a record amount of electricity last year from wind power, about 30%, and it exceeded the amount of power we generated from gas. But what the enthusiasts for green power weren't so quick to point out was that we also imported a record amount of energy. 16% of all the electricity we used in Britain last year was imported via subsea cables from France, Belgium, Netherlands, Denmark, Norway, and so on. And it's a sign of the failure of our power system.
Why would we need to import it if we were producing enough? But also, that, of course, that doesn't count. And even if that electricity is actually produced by gas, as it often is, that doesn't count in our carbon emissions, does it? In any of the net zero stuff, because if it comes from abroad, it doesn't count.
Some countries we're importing electricity from, Belgium, Netherlands, they still have some coal plants. So we closed all our coal plants down because it's sort of bad for the environment and, high carbon emissions. But then we import some sort of coal-powered electricity.
Yeah, but it doesn't go on the balance sheet, Ross, so it doesn't matter.
So that's really
I mean, it is a mad world, and also the key thing is you can produce, you say 30% of electricity. Again, it's of electricity, not energy. Electricity being only a fifth of our needs for energy, but you can produce that record amount of wind power. However, if the days you don't produce it, you, funnily enough, still need to have power.
Well, you do, and the government hasn't sort of resolved this issue. And Ed Miliband's latest plan is to keep all our gas-powered power stations open and in service, but just not use them very much. Well,
okay.
I mean, the cost of doing that, the cost of keeping all these gas power stations online and maintained, ready to go when the sun goes in and the wind drops, I mean, that's going to cost a fortune.
We're going to be basically paying twice for our electricity.
Yes,
but this is the key thing. We're going to be needing not less electricity in future. We're going to be needing more, because we're going to be, moving apparently, to electric vehicles. We've still got all those mandates. We've still got fines. I know there's a little bit of offsetting being allowed for some of the car manufacturers, but still huge fines, 15 grand per car sold that is not an electric vehicle for any manufacturer in this country, which of course puts up the price of both electric and the petrol and diesel vehicles. But we're told that, as I say, the UK is on this cusp of an electric car charging point revolution. The number of plug-in stations are going to increase considerably. More than 120 planning applications for plug points worth more than £500 million have been granted in the last 18 months. And they're basically going to have a load more charging points. And so that means more people are going to want to buy these green cars. How do you think that's going to work out?
Well, a lack of charging points is certainly one of the main reasons why motorists and private motorists in particular are very shy of buying electric cars, because, around a third of British homes do not have off-street parking.
No,
and then you become reliant on the public charging sockets, which are sparse and often out of order and expensive.
Yeah. We had one put in a few years ago, just near our home. Frankly, I thought Camden Council did it deliberately, just to take the mick out of me. I really did. Just the only one in the street happened to be outside my home. It broke down after 6 months, never been mended.
No, well, that's a problem. But also my question is, how much is the electricity going to cost from these new charging points? Because at the moment, if you charge at home, you can get a tariff which you pay about 7 pence off. 7 pence per kilowatt hour off peak for your electricity. Charge your car, If you go to a public charging station, that costs you an average of 57 pence per kilowatt hour for a slow charger and 80 pence per kilowatt hour for a rapid charger. You know, it's as if there's two networks of petrol pumps, one which can only be used by the relatively wealthy, where the fuel is £1.30 a litre, and then another network which can be used by everyone else, where the fuel is £13.
Yeah, but it is part of the whole deal, isn't it? They don't want us owning cars at all. They don't want us travelling. We've got these massive green surcharges that are going to go on family holidays abroad. I mean, you come from our holidays, you know how I feel about that. Ross Clark, always good to talk to you, always making sense out of the madness and, frankly, the dishonest claims that are constantly made on this issue. Claire Pearsall, what do you say about your useless Tory government doing exactly the same madness as this useless Labour government?
But I called it out for being useless at the time.
I
like my petrol car. I shall keep my petrol car for some time and probably get a bigger engine one.
Yeah, we got a diesel one. The moment they're going to be outlawed, which I don't think they ever will do, we're just going to go buy another diesel car the day before. Simple as that. As I think any sane person will do. But there we are. Claire, thank you very much. It's been such a pleasure having your company. We had so many texts and messages I didn't get to, but so many fantastic calls today, as always, on these ongoing issues over these grooming and rape gangs and the battles and the politics battles and, far right, and everybody. Someone else who's far right, because we're all far right now, remember, is Ian Collins, who's just joined us now.
Yeah, but I don't drive a pink Penelope Pipstop car like you do, Julia.
God, I'd love to. But I genuinely don't even know what my car is. It's grey. That's all I've got.
It's a grey car.
People in my street, I'm so rubbish.
We've all got grey cars.
I've got a grey car. I said to her, why? Don't get us a grey car. I'll never find... I literally come out of our house, because we don't know, something lucky.
There's nothing else you buy in grey.
No, and I genuinely... And I'm clicking the beeper thing, and I'm looking, where are the lights? Anyone know whether it's just mine? And I've literally had neighbours go, you're over there. Well, we use it so rarely. I genuinely don't. Honestly, I'm such a girl when it comes to cars.
I have rumbled you on something here. Brits are flocking to Mexico because the Mexican government are offering a 2-for-1 deal on windmills. Now, I know what your game is.
I've just been in Mexico.
That's where you've been.
I was absolutely
Did you get a job
out with windmills. Totally with windmills, yeah. Yeah. Was there a free bar at the windmills? I was not there then.
Well, apparently our arguments and our concerns over the evangelical nature of net zero are unfounded now, because we are fueling the entire nation via the conduit of wind. And a bit of solar.
A bit of hot air, anyway.
I've got a funny feeling there's another side to that story.
Yeah, I've got to see. Well, apparently we are far right for thinking that, because that's what James Matthews from the Labour Party said.